Well, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Would you please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to our meeting this evening. Colleen, Joe is missing. Do you know anything about?
I tried calling twice. There's no answer.
Oh, dear. Okay. Mr. Superintendent, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are not this evening.
Okay. We have no minutes to approve, no personnel. Superintendent report, please.
Okay, this could be lengthy. So you did receive a copy of the August financial report. There's not a lot of specifics that I need to go through with this. On the first page, we are through 2 months. It's about 16% of our budget year. It means 84. You'd expect those numbers and the percent remaining to be around 84%. But as I explained last month, they're not all. Some things we expend more. I did not get a chance to dig too deeply today to figure out under Article 7, there's only 76% remaining in that account. I didn't get a chance to dig into that too much, but all the rest of them are fine. Usually supplies and such usually make those lines drawn down a little faster, but they don't seem to be so much this year. Some of those, there will be some costs that may be restored because they are part of the COVID relief fund grant or part of the CARES Act, and those haven't been funded yet. So when those are funded, some money may be restored to those lines. On the second page, again, 2 months into it, there are some accounts. We'd expect about 16% of our revenues coming in from the local allocation and from the state allocation, and that's a little bit behind. We've only received just over 7% from the state, and we've received about 12.75% from the local, 2 months worth. And a lot of those other revenues, as you look down through, are we have received no revenues yet, but we certainly. So that's what we planned on, and we intend that we will get those at some point. So nothing really outstanding to report at this time. I will tell you that I did, in my opening presentation to all of the staffs, I did give them a heads up that we are anticipating a curtailment this year, and that as a result of that, probably fairly quickly, once the school year starts, we'll be looking at some type of freeze. Nobody seemed to be terribly surprised by that with the revenue projections from the state. I think people just knew that was a likely reality. So any questions on the finance report? I have a lot of other things to get to.
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. Opening schools, you're going to hear more from the other administrators later, so I'll be brief about that. But for me, I had to. Oh, there's Joe.
Yeah, Joe was just kind of sitting here. I did get Joel's letter, so that's good.
Yep.
And I couldn't get you.
Okay.
Glad you're here now.
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Anyway, I think there are some people that may need to mute their mics because we can hear some additional background. So if you're from the public speaking, if you could mute your mic, that would be really helpful. The opening day, we did it over. The grade school had to be split into 2 groups, and so I went to them on I believe it was Tuesday, and then Wednesday. doesn't sound right. Whatever. One day I was at the grade school for 2 days, and then the next day I was at the middle school, high school. I want to apologize for Kristen that we locked her out of the middle school so she couldn't get in. And then I didn't bother to answer my phone. But I think I got a lot of, maybe that was more for me. I don't know how other people felt. I heard positive things, but for me, it was very energizing to be able to stand up in front of the staff and share my perspective on opening and kind of things we're looking at. And hopefully the staff took something positive out of that. My sense is they did, but you can ask the administrators more about that later. And so, any questions?
May I interrupt you?
Sure.
And we loved your singing and the really meaningful songs that you picked out. That was very cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure that I give credit to Kurt Jack, who is my accompanist, and he's somebody who's pretty familiar to our Winthrop teachers and our school system. So it was great to have him be a part of that and join me, give up his time for four meetings. So that was pretty meaningful for me. So thank you, I appreciate that. I want to draw your attention to a document that was sent out to you, and I apologize to the public that you will not have this in front of you, but certainly can listen in. I'm going to talk very briefly about the front of this, and I'm going to talk more about the back of it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start with the back because I want to talk about the CARES Act. The CARES Act is the first round of money that was made available to schools dealing with COVID issues. And I want to thank Jeff Ladd, because Jeff is the one who actually did the application. I worked with various people to figure out where to put the money. This was our smaller pot of money. We had just over 160,000. The actual number is not reflected on this page, but Jeff did a great job of making sure that we did not give back a single penny to the DOE. So what I account for is 159,600, but it's actually slightly more than that. But that money we have, I think it's 16 months to expend that money. There's a few less strings attached to that money, so we could be a little more. We could have been a little bit more creative with that. The issue with the CARES Act money, just like with the CRF funds, which you'll see, it's actually CRF grant because otherwise that'd be redundant. Is that they both all grants, like the title funds that Mr. Ladd does for us, are not supposed to supplant regular budgeted monies. They're supposed to supplement. So in this case, all of these things are we have to justify, and I have to sign documentation that says that they are the result of, or an indirect result of the impact of COVID. So, but that is the background. The three things we're looking to use our first CARES Act for 4 additional bus runs from January to June. Again, I didn't finish saying this, but this money, we have 16 months to expend. The other bigger part of money that's at the top of this list and on the other side of this page is has to be expended before December 31st of this year. So it made it a little bit tricky. So we use the CARES Act money to pay for the 4 additional runs, to move the number of our bus runs from 7 to 11 so we can socially distance on our buses. And then I got an expectation, created an expectation of additional bus cleaning. And the Northeast Charter was, of course, willing to take that on at a cost. So $86,000 for the 4 additional bus runs, $33,600 for the additional cleaning. And then we took money out of the Director of Teaching and Learning and put that in here so that it doesn't have it. That does kind of supplant regular budget monies, but I think there was a sense, and I sort of couched it with that we were not sure that we were going to fill that position. Two issues came up related to COVID specific, and the biggest one being, and you'll see a little bit again, there's less money in the CRF grant, but that Meagan will be the primary point person for coordinating remote learning. So that's how we sort of were able to put it into this grant. So any questions on those three things only? I don't want to go into the other part. Any questions on those? No?
Doesn't look
Okay.
like it. No.
Moving on, then, so I'm going to go back to the other side. Oops, I'll hold the right side up for you guys. And no, you don't need to spend a lot of time with this except to know that everything that's on the back, at the top part of the back, is a little more broken down, a little more specific. And then for the state form that I had to submit, I have to sort of group them all together by category, and these are all the categories. And so that's what was submitted. That grant has, I think I sent that out to the school committee. That was approved. Had to be in by the 31st. And I actually submitted it last week, got some feedback, and then resubmitted it on Monday under the deadline, and found out later that day that it was approved. I wasn't worried about that because I had submitted the list of things I was looking to put in there probably close to 3 weeks ago, just to see if I was on the right page in terms of my thinking. And essentially everything that everything that I did send to the gentleman at the state, Stan Sawyer, was basically given a thumbs up. And so then I just had to fill it into this form. The details, the more details of that are on the other side. And some of these are, I'm sorry, what I meant to tell you is that for this grant, I have until the end of September to submit a final. So this is like an approved draft. As we massage this and change things around and things change over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we can change this, change these numbers, and then I have to resubmit a final draft before the end of September, and that'll be the final determination of how much money that we are getting. So the first 3 lines on here, there's 4 additional bus runs. Looks a little bit like the same thing. 4 additional bus runs from September to December. Remembering these funds have to be expended before the end of December. So 4 additional bus runs from September to December. And then the third thing is a daily bus cleaning from September to December. That's the same as it's on the other grant, but this is the September, December portion. And then we are paying for driver barriers that they're going to install on each of the buses to keep our drivers and our students safe on the bus. So that's what those are. The next one is devices for remote learning. Those are all the additional devices we purchase for our staff because we, whether we do synchronous or asynchronous learning, then our staff are going to need to have a second device because they can't use their device for teaching, which most of our teachers do, and also use it for some type of remote learning at the same time. So before we knew exactly how many students we're going to have for remote, we had to order those for our teachers. Mike did a great job getting those orders. Mike Dalal did a great job getting that in. So we have got all of our laptops in for our second laptops for our staff. What's missing is some of the other things. We ordered some cameras and some, I can't think what the other term is, but the other document cameras and things like that are not in. And the prognosis for getting those in anytime soon is not great. So we're just going to have to figure out how to deal with that. The next thing on here is security for the central office and town office, and that's to make us in sync with where the rest of the campuses have the pre-K-12 schools, to have those, again, not have to have a lot of touch spaces, high touch areas. And so talked to Jeff Colbrook, the town manager, and I talked to the other gentleman that's installing that and asked if we could do that here. And, you know, and we said we could. Chairperson, yep.
May I interrupt you, please?
Sure.
If we go back to devices for remote learning.
Yeah.
So the equipment that has not come in, how will that impact our delivery of remote learning?
There weren't that many teachers that requested them, so they're going to have to. I'm hoping, or we're hoping that we either can find a second device for those who want it, or we can we have a lot of people who don't want to do synchronous; they want to do asynchronous, and so if they're doing asynchronous, they don't need 2 devices.
Thank you.
Okay. The next part is the trauma-informed school training. That was something that was a direct result, of course, with everything that happened with COVID, and some very timely professional development from a lady named Brittany Ray, who was here on the first 2 days of school, and she did the same when I was like doing introduction with half the grade school, the other half was with Brittany getting the 3-hour training. Her training is actually much longer than that. She was very, very gracious to do that in a shortened session, and we're hoping that she's got a lot more to offer, and maybe if some professional development days open up later in the year or sometime early next year, that she would come back and complete that. You can ask the administrators when they get on there, but I got exceptionally high feedback, positive feedback from staff about her message and timeliness of it, and what a great presenter she is. I got to see her last year. She did a 2-day presentation where I was working last year. Then we have the COVID relief specialists, which are essentially at this time 6-hour-a-day people that are, for lack of a better term, coming in to be our gophers. They are going to be doing whatever needs to be done. Duties, covering duties, assisting with coverage of classrooms, or monitoring kids in the hallway, whatever we need. So every building has hired at least one person off. We got a list, generated a list, and then people have been hired. That probably, once this all shakes out, will become a 7-hour position, not a 6-hour position. And again, all of these positions that I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to say it every time, are just for 4 months at the max. That's assuming that we stay green until December. And if we do, then these positions will go away after December, unless, of course, we get some additional funding. Okay. And I apologize. I didn't catch this until I've been reviewing this with different people over the last couple of days. That should say remote learning teachers. We just met as an A-team a little while ago, a couple hours ago, prior to this meeting. And right now we're not doing anything with this, but we did advertise. If anybody sees any advertising, we put anticipated openings for these remote learning teachers. And these essentially, we're looking to hire certified teachers that will assist us in focusing on remote learning. And I know that people, and I might as well say this to the people who are on listening, people all want to know about remote learning. There's not, all we can do is sort of plan for different scenarios, and we won't know specifically what's going to happen until we know exactly the number of kids. We have a good idea now, and we've done some planning around that, and we're having these positions, remote learning teachers positions, gives us an opportunity to do some additional what ifs, what if scenarios. Our hope is that we may possibly, and I want to emphasize, may possibly be able to, depending on how many kids don't show up, that we may be able to have teachers who just do in-person and people who are designated to do just remote. And there's obviously a lot more that needs to be discussed in terms of how that happens. But the remote learning teachers anticipated was, if we make that discovery within the first week of school, that we have this need, and we now have a ready pool of applicants that we can go pick from, instead of advertising at that period and then seeing what waiting a week or two to get applicants. Now we have quite a number of applicants already of people who are certified and looking for positions. So if we go with that model, then we can hopefully make the transition
It tastes good, just like the.
I don't know the name. Again, I've been asked, there are people who probably need to mute their mic because we need to be able to continue the meeting without the people watching speaking over others who are speaking. Right now, it's me.
Maybe it's Haley McPherson. I don't see a mute sign by her name.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it now, so perhaps. So let's get back. So that's obviously going to hear more about that as time goes on. As soon as we get the students back, and we have a strong handle, much better handle on in the ideal world, the same percentage of first graders and second graders and third graders and fourth graders will all be staying home. Probably not going to work out that way, so it won't be as easy as to say we can just divide them up, to have the in-person and the remote teachers, that cleanly. And then, of course, you wouldn't have to think about this too long to figure out that that'll be a greater challenge for the high school, and more of a challenge, but not insurmountable for the middle school to use that same kind of model. So we figured that will give us the best chance to, I know the members of the school committee have shared with me they would like the remote learning to be as close to the in-person. I feel like I've said a number of times that's probably not a realistic expectation, but I think to the extent that we can provide an opportunity for our remote learners to be able to ask questions and get feedback and complete that communication loop, that would be our goal. Water bottle filling stations, I just learned tonight, and I'm gonna have to double check on this. I was told by the administrators, I should tell you that I got a list of expenditures from Amanda Boyce, and that was on that list. But I'm being told that was paid out of last year's fund, so I'll double check on that. And if that's the case, that'll free up $12,000. PPE purchases, at this point, we've probably spent about half that money. That's face masks, and there are things that we haven't received yet, so we haven't been charged for, primarily gowns and gloves are the big things we haven't received. Well, we received gloves, but not in great quantities yet. Gowns are still on hold. Dr. McConnell has ordered some, and hopefully those will come in sooner than later, but we're undoubtedly going to have to buy more of all of those things. So we're pretty comfortable that number will be a solid number for PPE. I should tell you, related to that is all of the schools have come down. All of the PPE supplies have been delivered to either someplace here at the grade school or here to central office. We have a lot of it here at central office, and people have been coming down and bringing those back. So we have masks for all of the teachers. We have masks for all of the students. We're still hoping that people will supply their own masks instead of using the disposable masks, and that the parents will keep them, or the kids will keep them clean. We ordered face shields for all of our students, and they are, you can wear those in addition to masks, or you can use them. You can use a face shield if we get a note from your doctor saying that you have a medical reason to do that. The next thing on here is bus monitor. Again, for 4 months, we had talked about putting a bus monitor on the grade school runs, because we want to try and do the best we can to ensure that our youngest children are going to keep their masks on and stay seated and properly distanced on the buses. I can tell you, as of we've advertised this quite a while ago. We're having very, very little luck getting people to apply for the position of a bus monitor. At the very least, we're hoping that we can provide a bus monitor for our pre-K midday runs, taking kids home from the morning and picking kids up for the afternoon, and talk to Larry Allen about that. So he said he can either figure out how to staff that, or we can take a look at the applicant and other possibilities that we might have, but we will undoubtedly fill the midday one. So that again is a pretty sizable chunk of money that if we don't get applicants, we don't get people to do that, then we're gonna have to, we either will use that money somewhere else, or we'll have to figure out a way to entice people through finances to do that. But again, these are all 4-month positions. Extra cleaning is, we did some additional contract with FMS, our cleaning contractor. I had a meeting with Patrick Dillon, they're the owner. I had him at the school committee's request. I had them and Northeast Charter submit letters of assurance about trainings and things that they'll be using. I'm asking them in each of the buildings, there's been an extra person hired for each building to focus on the high touch areas, primarily bathrooms and cafeteria. That's not all they're going to do, but that's what we really want to focus on. Fans, air conditioners, those are primarily for the grade school, and most of them have been installed. Some are still being installed. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to get electricians at this point, so they are, they're getting put in as fast as possible. I did have had a number of people reach out and talk to me about that whole issue, and some of it goes back to the study that was done, the architectural study that was done. I did have a gentleman from town to come in and talk to Mr. Ladd and myself about what our plan is for ventilation and air circulation in those rooms. And basically, the person came in with some possible solutions for us, but then felt that what Mr. Ladd had done was going to be more than sufficient for ensuring that there's proper air exchange and ventilation in those rooms. Desk equipment, sort of I don't want to take a lot of time, but this was a bit of a chuckle at our administrative team meeting today. We spent years and years and years as schools trying to get teachers to get rid of desks and move towards tables, and have been very successful, quite successful here in Winthrop in getting people to do that. And now we don't have a lot of desks. And now that this has hit and we need to put rows and 6 feet apart, and then we put desks in the cafeterias, that we had to purchase lots and lots and lots of desks. And if you come into our schools now, which you can't, but you would see that all of our classrooms have the desks that are 6 feet apart, not tables anymore. So it's not really funny. So I shouldn't have said it was a joke. It wasn't. It just was ironic that we've worked so hard to get people to not do rows, and now to do. Okay, so signage. Obviously, there's a lot of things, signs and stuff that need to be put on the floors and on the walls, and we have to limit. For instance, bathrooms have to have a limited number, and so all that signage stuff we had to purchase all that. So we also have money in here for in looking at planning for art, PE, and music supplies. We have to buy additional supplies because, to the extent possible, we have to not have have kids share any of those supplies. So we need additional supplies. So a fair amount of that has already been ordered. And then the last thing on here, of course, is this was easy for here. First of all, it's a small amount of money, but it's the same rationale as I said before, that Meagan the Director of Teaching and Learning, Meagan, will be the primary point person with respect to remote learning, which is a direct result of COVID. So that all adds up to $658,477. I didn't tack in the 16 cents, which is down below. So I could add that in, and maybe when I submit it for final approval, I'll add that in somewhere. So that's the CRF funds. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has with respect to that list.
School committee members, questions? I have a question. Do you have any kind of, have you heard anything about additional funding after the end of December?
Well, there is some already, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for us, and I'll have to take a harder look at that tomorrow because the deadline is Friday. But I think it's really more for our childcare and those types of things. So as I looked at it quickly, I did not see that it was appropriate. Well, it was something we could apply for right now. It's only, I hate to say this, it sounds real ridiculous, but it's 25 million, which when you spread it out over the whole state is not that much. So I don't know how much we're eligible for. And unlike this grant, or these two grants, which designated an amount for us, this is a competitive process. So we have to identify a need, and then we have to apply for a certain amount of money and see what we get funded for. So if there's something appropriate in that application dealing with our daycare or some, those types of things, which we have, so it's possible, then if there is something, then we'll be applying for it. I'm not going to leave money on the table if I can get some.
Thank you. And then there's just another thing that's just been bugging me. It's been bugging me for years. Miss Chris, could I see you, please? Are you there? There. Miss
I'm
Chris.
here. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
What can I do for you?
So, well, I think I've asked this question before, but I just haven't registered the answer. So the ventilation system at the middle school, I think there's a whole portion that's not working. And sadly, I didn't think of this
No,
earlier when people were putting together
Nope.
the
Nope. Ginny-
CRF stuff. So go.
Jenny, Siemens has come in. Siemens has come in. Garrett from Siemens has come in, and he's replaced at this point 4 motors. The ventilation system, the intake and output works in every classroom, every hallway. We are 100% good to go as of last Thursday afternoon.
So you're as good as a new building.
I think we're better than some new buildings that are being built right now. Yes, ma'am.
I should say when you had your new building. So
I think
everything's
that my
functioning.
middle school is better than what the high school was when it opened. Yes.
Excellent. Well, I'm just going to put that nagging thought to
Just put
bed.
it to bed, Ginny. We're 100% ready to go.
Okay.
Everything works, thank God.
Thank you so much. Okay,
You're welcome.
that's all.
Any-
That's all I had. Yeah.
Any other questions on CRF grant? So it's coronavirus, corona relief funds. That's why it's redundant to say CRF because it's fun, but
No,
okay,
it's
so-
lovely. It seems like everything's coming together.
so I'm gonna leave fall sports just for a second because I think that's gonna be a lengthy conversation, and I didn't put it in a specific other place on the agenda because at the time we created the agenda, it didn't have quite the fire. It had a fairly significant firestorm, but not as quite as much as it is right now. We're probably going to need to spend some significant time on that. So another thing that I hope we can address fairly quickly, and I think I saw that Dr. McConnell is on here, so I'd certainly ask for her to weigh in. But I think we do need to make, and Kristen asked this question, and I may have jumped to the answer incorrectly, but there was some clarification that I got from the CDC, from Steve Bailey at Maine School Management, and from, I can't think of her name, Kelly DeVoe at the Department of Education. And I have to tell you, first of all, it was a very frustrating process because I looked and looked and looked and looked for what I was hoping would be the answer. When I really couldn't find it, I called CDC directly. Did not find their guidance or their help was very helpful at all. I then was directed to call Kelly DeVoe at the Department of Education, called her, left a message for her. Then I called Steve Bailey. He got right back to me and talked me off the edge and whatever. But it has to do with mask breaks. And I think undoubtedly we need to make a change. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get a consensus, not necessarily take a vote, because I'm just concerned that it's a pretty substantial document that's had a lot of reviews. And I think there's going to need some tweakings, and this is probably a little bit more than a tweaking, but I don't know. I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours dealing with this. So essentially, let me say what this issue is, and then Kristen, if you want to bring up the thing that that you specifically asked me about, because it wasn't this, we're certainly can address that publicly. But the mass break thing is this. This was a question, and I have to give you the whole story. Over the weekend, I was with a bunch of people, a bunch of my friends who are educators in other districts, and a couple times people were referred to mass breaks in their schools, and basically talked about that they were going to, as long as the kids were 6 feet apart, they could take their masks off and have a mass break in their classroom. That's very, very similar to what we had initially said with the committee quite a while back. And then felt like we got guidance that said that was not going to be okay, and that mask breaks needed to be defined in a whole different way. So without belaboring the point, when I finally got called back from the Department of Education and talked to Steve, they gave me this clarification, and I think this is where we land. I'd like the school board to essentially just have consensus, and then allow us to put this specifically add this to the long form. Students can take a mask break in their rooms as long as they are spaced and stayed seated. They can't be up and walking around, and they have to be 6 feet apart, and that it can last no more than 5 minutes. So a 5-minute mask break in each class. And there's no specific number for the day, except and this wasn't specific, but I would add the language that it can happen once per class. So in addition to other mask breaks that the schools are already looking to do within every class, so if you're not grade school, you might say within every subject area that when you switch from one subject to another, you're in a different block. You can take a 5-minute mask break as long as you are 6 feet or more spaced out, and that the students remain at their desk. That's the change as I interpret it from, not my interpretation, that's what I was told from Kelly DeVoe. So I'd like to add that to the part that talks about mask breaks in our long form.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that, excuse me, the steering committee has done an awfully good job since the middle of June. I was wondering if you want to take it back to them for some sort of consensus, and then have the committee recommend it to us.
So most of the committee members are on this, or a lot of the committee members are on this call, and I sent that out to them saying that would be my recommendation. And I don't want to speak for all of them, but I mean, we can do that. We meet again next week, but I think we want to, and that's only after the first day of school. We don't meet as a school committee until the 16th of September. I see no reason not to implement that immediately. It fits within our guidance of following CDC guidelines, even though CDC wouldn't specifically give me the thumbs up on that. They're the ones that recommended me to talk to Kelly DeVoe, and Kelly was very clear. And I said to her, I'm not going to tell on other schools, but I know other people aren't following that guideline.
Does Kelly DeVoe have anything in black and white that she'll send to us?
I could certainly ask her to do that, but she's the definitive person in getting this statement that, you know, we can do that.
I'd like to see something in black and white that can be added to our...
Why wouldn't we change that to now? I just would like to know from the school committee why we wouldn't change it. If the person who tells us what to do tells us to do that.
If the steering committee's okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't really want to wait till the 16th to ask the committee to, and again, this is my bigger concern is this. it's a lengthy document. It's subject to, I don't want to say a lot of scrutiny, but there's a lot to it. So every time somebody sees something that could be clarified or whatever, you know, I guess that's really the bigger question here is what process are we going to use to massage? Because, you know, I think the committee did a great job with this. I think you guys, as a school committee, did a great job with this. The feedback and all the hundreds of people who were able to weigh in it from the community. At some point, we need to say the document is you know, from my perspective, when you guys voted on it, the document is in place. It doesn't mean it'll never ever change. I think we're going to need to massage it, but.
Right, I think when the school committee voted on it, that is the document. It doesn't mean that you can't have addendums that function as corrections or additions or changes, but you would want to have a series of documents so that you can follow that chronologically along as that document has evolved. You wouldn't change the whole document every time, because then there would be no history of where the document started and where it has evolved to.
Well, we do have that because we have every draft that we changed. We don't throw those old drafts away. We have those, so we certainly have a record of what the draft looked like when I first put it together, however long ago, and then every time there's a revision, that's documented. So we certainly have that document of changes, and it's you know, we have that.
So is it okay with you, Superintendent Hodgkin, if we say to you, if it's okay with the steering committee, it's okay with us? Is that good enough?
That works for me because again, most of them are on here, and Jen just had her face up there. There she is, and you know, I think her opinion on these types of more technical medical, you know, I think it's really we weigh heavily on her input. So you can ask her; she's right there.
Yeah, there she is. She's doing deep breathing exercises.
I am.
Okay, Dr. McConnell.
Well, I think that I don't want to belabor it at all, but I do think there's a couple little pieces here maybe we need to kind of back up on. First of all, in the time that I spent some time with the middle school, then the high school, and today the elementary school, things are changing. So that's the other piece. When we started this, or when we had our last conversation with you all, the steering committee and the community, what we do with a positive test in our school has changed dramatically on who we quarantine, et cetera. So in some ways, I think that's changed how we can face mask breaks. I also recognize that we've run into some trouble that I think there needs to be a change in the long form about. There's a line in there on the 4th page, 3rd paragraph down, sad state of affairs, I know that, but that all faculty and staff need to be 100% masked all day long. That's impossible. So that needs to be adjusted. I think we all tried really, really hard and put a lot of energy into making this document perfect so we wouldn't have to go back to square one. But unfortunately, I think that we need to amend the document, and I think we need to go through the channels. So I would say that students are going back. I think we probably could get consensus pretty quickly if the steering committee, but I think 2 things need to happen. One is I do think it's appropriate that if kids are 6 feet apart in a classroom, that they can take a mask off if they're sitting quietly at their desk, reading, writing. But if they're fooling around, if they're doing projects, their mask needs to be on. The other thing, I think that if a faculty or a staff is alone in an office, or if 2 people experience in the elementary school, OT, PT, they're in the same office, same building, same room, but they're 14 feet apart, no students in there, they can sit quietly at their desk, take their mask off, and eat their lunch. I'm not advocating they eat their lunch and do their paperwork. They choose to do that, as we all know they do, then they can. But I think we need to be reasonable. But I think that we do need to have some adjustment for those things that come up.
So I want to add on what Dr. Connell is saying, because I agree with it. We do have a committee meeting next week. And I guess part of the reason I was sort of pushing for this, and she said what I was hoping she was going to say about this specific issue. I don't want to wait for, I don't mind double checking with the committee. I don't mind talking to, I don't know why I keep forgetting her name, Kelly, to give me a written statement of what she told me on the phone. But I don't really want to wait to, I don't really want to put this in place, wait to put this in place, because I think it's going to, I think we want to start on day one. I want to start on Tuesday with, I want to let the teachers know as soon as we possibly can, which will be tomorrow. But it could be later tomorrow, that they can do this type of mass break. I think for a lot of people, the whole mass break nightmare is really overwhelming and scary for people. So I don't want to put Jana on the spot, but did you guys, those mass breaks okay for you guys today?
So the way that we handled ours today, and we kind of figured it out on the way, we are, and then I can only speak for middle school. We are 6 feet apart in our classrooms because we are also eating in our classrooms. So there is that luxury. We are not taking like necessarily sanctioned, like everyone, it's a mask break, take your mask off. What we have said to kids is if they feel like they need to take their mask off for a little bit, take it off. We try to, as a teacher, be aware of that and ask them to only do it for no longer than 10 minutes. Most kids only take it down just a little bit off their nose is what we found today. Although when we came in from recess, which kids had been able to go out and get some fresh air, they came in and they came in with their masks on and they sat down, and most of them took their masks off when I started class, and I looked and it had been about 15 minutes. And I said, if you have had your mask off, excuse me, since you've come in, you need to put it back on. So it's me remembering to tell them that too. As a teacher, I talk a lot, and it was very, very hot. Again, I'm able to be 6 feet away from them, and even more in some classrooms. So I was able to sometimes take my mask down and have a little bit of a conversation and then put it back up. Don't even think I took mine off for more than a minute, to be honest with you, with students in the room. We are asked to keep a mask on 100% of the day unless we're taking a break or eating. If we are alone in our classrooms, we are allowed to take our masks off, but if somebody comes into them, we are to put them back on, especially if we're any closer than 6 feet or something like that. And that was just day one. And so, I mean, hearing the 5-minute thing, I may have to adjust that and see. I don't think there was ever a time, at least in any classroom that I was in, where 100% of the kids had their masks off unless we were eating. Even when I went outside and took the kids for a walk and they could take their masks off, I had kids who were still masked because they wanted to keep those masks on. They felt safer that way.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just check, because I think that you can get the consensus pretty quickly. And I see on the comments, people think that the consensus from the steering committee can be done fairly quickly unless you run into a snag. But let me just check. Kristen, are you okay with the changes that Superintendent Hodgkin has suggested, if the steering committee is okay with them?
Yes.
Ms. Bells?
Yes.
Ms. Dykett?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Petrosky?
Yes, but I have a question.
Go.
And my question is that it seemed to me that for some age of the students, that only allowing 5 minutes in a regular student period is not enough. That there should be more than one break, allowed during that time.
So the all the schools are doing additional breaks. I don't, Mrs. Chris was talking about what they're doing at the middle school. That's sort of the in-class break. They're all going to get additional break time. The 5 minute, that guidance came directly from Kelly DeVoe, so I can't really, say. I know the middle school is going to do more than that. Do you want to talk about it, Karen? You pop back on, so there you are.
I did, Jim. Thank you. Joe, I do not have room in my building, nor do I have enough staff to do 6-foot seating. The middle school students are 3 feet apart in their academic cohorts. They will wear a mask for no less than 50 minutes at a time. We have worked in 4 25-minute breaks during the day. If we can agree to this, even with that, there is no way any kid in any cohort is going to remove their mask during an academic class. I don't have the space, nor do I have the staff. If you want this to happen, I have to do it by the rule book. Thank you, Jen. I see you laughing, you and Amanda. I'm watching. It's not going to happen. And guess what, Joe? My staff has worked for 7.5 hours, 8-hour days with their mask on, and nobody has dropped dead yet. We might have come close. Kids are going to do this, and they're going to be fine, or else you're going to change your entire plan, and we're going to go hybrid, where I have half the kids on 2 days a week and half the kids the other day. I cannot open school any other way than the plan that I have right now. They are not having mask breaks until I tell them or an adult tells them, now you can take your mask off, period. They're not putting it under their nose. They're not doing anything else. And if they should, they're going home and they will become a remote learner. That's what I have been told to do, and that's what I am doing. It is black and white. We are dealing with safety and lives. No staff is going to break the rule, nor is any student. Not happening under my watch. I've made this perfectly clear from day one. What the long form and what this board tells me to do, I'm doing. 3-foot distance, 4 25-minute breaks during the day, period. If parents and student can't live by that, they can live with being a remote learner. Sorry, Joe, is what it is.
Oh, no, you're not disappointing me. You're telling me something, okay? And
Read the letter on my website. It's been out for 2 weeks, Joe.
So I just want to jump in here because that's because of circumstances, and what the advice from or the guidance from Kelly DeVoe basically told us is that we were thinking and looking at the high school and the grade school that there were going to be, and there still will be, structured breaks, but they're going to be, because the other places can do the 6-foot distancing, then they can, at the teacher discretion, have mask breaks within each of the periods. So they can actually end up with more mask breaks or more time.
That's good. That answers another question about teacher discretion.
Yeah, it's not a,
Because some teachers might not want to give mask breaks. That'll be up to the teacher, correct?
yeah, and that was one of the comments from somebody weighing in, and
Right.
it really is up to the teachers about whether they're comfortable or think it's safe to do that.
Well, I don't want to belabor this issue. I think you have the okay from the school committee if it's okay with the steering committee. So.
Yep.
Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Enough okays? All
That's
right.
perfect. That was the easy one. Now we'll go to the hard one. Well, actually, Kristen, do you want to ask the question that you asked me about? Would it require a change? I think you asked about the government.
Yes, I forgot which question you were referring to. So I'm like, I don't think that was me. Let me pull it up so that I have exactly what I sent to you. So basically, I'm not gonna be able to find it. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. So after the new governor orders that came out or were reported on Friday regarding the new contract contact tracing. I was just wondering if our plan needed to be reworked in order to accommodate that. And over the weekend, Mr. Hodgkin got back to me, and I had just asked if he make it part of his report out, so that everybody, felt comfortable that it had been addressed, and that they had the same information.
So my response to that, and again, Dr. McConnell is on. I keep putting her on the spot, but she responded to me and said exactly what I was thinking. We're not super specific in the long form about when we have a positive case, or there's some specificity, but the big piece is, as a lot of them have said, if we have a positive student or staff, that essentially it then gets turned over to the CDC to do the contact tracing and such. We have responsibilities with what we put in place for conditions like making sure they all remain masked, make sure they, if they're not able to have 3 feet, that they're masked 100% of the time. If 6 feet, all that stuff is what we're responsible for. But even that new guidance, that new guidance around contact tracing, I believe, and again, I don't want to put Jen on the spot, but I read her email to say she kind of agreed with that too, that we don't necessarily need to change the long form about that, because it's still essentially the same protocol for us, that we would reach out to the CDC and then they come in and take it over.
Okay. Thank you.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay. Fall sports. This has been, there's Joel. Hey, Joel.
How's it going?
It's great. So this has been the hottest topic of conversation over the last week plus, because the MPA came out with their initial ruling that they thought that fall sports could go. They put some guidance around there, or some suggestions around that. And from my perspective, I'll be perfectly blunt. I felt like for me, the whole recommendations doesn't pass the straight face test, in that all this conversation we just had about masking and that type of stuff, we're doing so much to try and keep our kids safe and in school and all that type of stuff. And then then we're going to allow them to participate in fall sports. Having said that, that's what I feel like I have to say. But you're all in your positions, as am I, to serve the wishes of the community. And my guess is going to be, that's going to be a huge contradiction. I don't know how, and I'm frustrated that we're being asked to reconcile the worst of two scenarios. I've lived in Maine my entire life. I've lived in this country. I know how crazy we are about not just sports, but all that, the drama and music and all those types of things that are being, very much in jeopardy right now. And by the MPA making the decision to essentially leave it up to the school boards and local towns to make that decision, it feels grossly unfair. I can't imagine, I would just be really honest, that I can't imagine that the 5 of you collectively are going to make the decision if the MPA, or it's got a lot more things, and that's what was saying, Chairperson Guy was saying just before we came on, that we got this email from the MPA at 4:30. So it's always changing. Joel and I talked a number of times through email over the weekend about the changes. Would you like Joel to take a few minutes to kind of go through the scenario of kind of how things have evolved? Joel, you ready to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute.
I'm on mute.
No, he's going to mute. Joel, you're good to go.
So I'm not, a lot of talking already. I really want to just get to the meat of the issue with you folks. Basically, after I'm on 2 fall committees for the MPA, so I've had a seat at the table on some of these discussions, which is really good for our school system. And where I'm at with it is that we started back in early July, July 6th. There was a 4-phase system that came up from the MPA for summer workouts. The reason I bring that up, Jenny, is just because you kind of asked where we were.
Appreciate it.
We were given guidance of 1 through 4. We are on the 4th phase, which means that we have now shut down all sports but fall. And you can do some things just with fall sports, which are more skill oriented for the fall. What was surprising to us was a week ago, let me back up even further. 2 weeks ago, we contacted the state, basically. It doesn't matter what organization you want to talk about. We contacted the state, and I mean we by MPA in the committees. We asked for guidance saying, do you want us to use the DOE or do you want us to use the community sports? As you saw with the letter that I shared with you yesterday, they said community sports. Moved forward 2 weeks, or fast forward 2 weeks, we took that and we applied that. I'm on the golf committee and I'm on the football committee. We applied that the best that we could within those regulations, thinking that that was what the intent was. After everything came together, it was submitted to the state level. And after that was submitted, it changed again. As you saw in my email yesterday, and for the public, I literally was writing an email to the school board with the updated information, and then they came on and said, these are the new regulations, which is fine. That's their right to do that. Within the last 24 hours, we have had more information come out of the MPA. They met together with the government, the MPA and the government committees, and they've come up with a press release. The only thing that I can really get out of that, and I'm just going to be very blunt with you, it's clear as mud. The only thing that I get out of that is that we are now looking at starting sports for the fall, September 14th, which means it means quite a few things, and I can get into that as we start to talk about some of these documents that I shared with you. What it means to me is that we're moving things back and we're running out of time. We have to make a decision, not just so much locally, but as a state. That's a whole different conversation. But to stay focused on what we're talking about, I just want to bring you into the last 48 hours of the documents that you received from me. The first 2 documents were memos from the MPA as well as their return to play conversation. I get pretty wound up about this, so just do this to me if I'm moving too fast. So it's been very frustrating if you want to talk about. We got the regulations last Friday from the MPA, as well as a memo that it kind of outlined how things were supposed to go. They were from all the committees saying, this is how we think we can make things safe for our kids in the fall. Once the governor responded yesterday, that changed everything, because the guidelines we were using were community sports, and we applied that. However, the guidelines from community sports changed yesterday dramatically. I don't want to get off course much, but I just want to let you know that these community sports guidelines are going to affect not only local sports in schools, but it's going to affect your travel teams and so forth. That stuff was completely unmonitored this last summer, and that's gone. These things take it up another level. So bringing it back to today, there's 3 documents that you need to think about. That's what I'm trying to get to. And again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ramble. It's just a ton of information.
Jenna, always yawning.
Sorry.
Okay. When you look at the new guidelines from DHHS, they don't align with the MPA's guidelines anymore. The letter that I sent you states that. The letter from the governor's office to the MPA outlines clearly what it does not address. Taking that a step further, the last piece that I sent you from MSMA has a huge concern and component about what is going to be covered now from our insurance when we start to talk about and look at hosting sports anymore. And then that also starts to get into the questions that we started today of what do we do if we go to another school and they're not doing that? What do we do if a school shows up and they're not following what we're doing? That's kind of the overview. How does that affect Winthrop? That affects Winthrop in the sense of the MPA, in my opinion, not only regulates high school sports, but it's the recommendations that we take that we apply to middle school sports. That's the state level. At a local level, we have a massive issue with transportation. We have a massive issue with officials, and we have a massive issue with manpower of how we're gonna make sure that we can pull all of this off. Now, I will tell you, I can do it. We can pull it off. We can do those things. That's the athletic director in me. The administrator in me is going to be very honest with you. Looking at these documents, they're telling us that we should not have fall sports this year. However, if you are comfortable with me operating within these documents, I think I can offer some things to our student population. The next thing that you're going to be faced to deal with is when you look at the regulations that have been released from the governor's office for community sports, there's 3 different levels of sports. There's high risk, there's moderate risk, and there's low risk. Within those 3 sections, there's 8 levels that will lay out of what you can do within those areas. For example, football, rugby, and wrestling are a high risk, and the most they can do is an inter-squad scrimmage amongst each other with half the team. They can't even have a full team scrimmage, even when they're outdoors. So when we're having this conversation, and I want to be very clear that I've called my coaches and they know this is exactly where things are, so there are no blind sides here. I don't see how you have football at any level in the state of Maine this year. Just throwing that out there. Philosophically, I really don't understand how you have soccer and field hockey because they're all over each other too, but that's a complete different conversation. Under those regulations, you can do some things with soccer and field hockey. When you look at what is being allowed, everybody is masked except the folks that are out on the field. That doesn't pass the straight face rule with me because we're asking people with PE classes to make sure they're 14 feet apart. But athletically, if you want me to use those rules, I can make that work. I can also do sanitation. I can also make sure that people are socially distanced on the sidelines. Doesn't fit what we do all day, but it does fit the rules in the afternoon. So we can do that. But be aware, when you involve the MPA again, the most that they can play for schedules is regionalization. There are no state championships. There's only regionalization. And if we have to play a team in the north, according to the regulations from the governor, we don't go play them because regionalization is very clearly outlined in those guidelines, which tell us that we're only supposed to play people within the county or the next county over. And that really gets back to a local decision for you folks. When you go down to the lowest level, we have golf and we have cross country. This gets kind of interesting, so try to bear with me. Golf, I think we're going to be okay. We'll be able to do some things to allow that season to happen. I will tell you, though, that the state championship that's being offered by the MPA, because golf and cross country are 2 sports that are allowed for statewide competition, actually starts on September 14th, and the state championship is on October 9th. Is it a short season? Yes, but I would hope that people would get on board and say that that's pretty cool that they still get to have something. What gets interesting is cross country. When you take a look at what is allowed per level, is all good until they get to level 5 or the end of the document. So seriously, I'm not trying to say anything to confuse you. If you follow the end of the document, it literally says that at this time, there should not be any sort of races that are 5K 3.2, which is exactly what we run in a cross-country meet, or anything that can allow for a pack mentality, which, well, pack mentality is probably not the best word, but the reality is that they shouldn't be together. That's in a separate section of the article, so they contradict one another there also. I kind of feel that cross country, for the lack of a better term, is also in the crosshairs and could change also. What does that mean? That means that I know absolutely nothing. But the reality is, if I try to decipher these documents, there's no way that football is going to happen at any level. Cross country is possibly going to happen. Golf is definitely going to happen. And I really have no way to direct you between soccer and field hockey, because it depends on what sort or set of rules that you want to use to follow through on that. As far as more information coming in, I met with the golf committee today. We're good to go there. I really think that that's okay. I mean, I'm not anybody that understands golf or has watched golf can understand why. Tomorrow I meet with the football committee. In my opinion, I don't see anything coming out besides trying to look at it in the spring. In the meantime, there's also going to be meetings for field hockey and soccer, as well as cross country, to make determinations to see if those things can happen. If you had a chance to read the 4:30 email that I forwarded to you, that simply said that all of the organizations are working together. And I do want to give props to the MPA. The only reason we're having this conversation is because those people are still trying to get to the table to make it happen. And I want to say that publicly, because there's been a lot of criticism of them shutting down the season, and has nothing to do with their decisions at all. Hopefully those two organizations getting together will be able to make some decisions soon, which, getting down to the bare minimum, is where I'm at. I have not slept in a week. I don't know what to do. This isn't a poor me by anything, but the reality is that I have no information that gels together to make a recommendation to you. All I can do is give you the facts. It's a very tough time, and taking it even a step further, I think that we're being extremely unfair to kids, because that's it. And I didn't even reverse that spiel. I'm being honest with you. That's just kind of how I found the information to come on my desk today. So,
Okay, I missed something that you said, Joel.
I did
Can
too.
hold you for just a second, Joel?
sure.
Everybody, all the community members, please mute your mics.
Okay.
There's somebody keeps on, there's some
Keeping up.
noise that keeps on coming through.
Sure.
So school board and superintendent and Joel have open mics, and that's all, please. Okay, Joel, your last statement. I missed some words in that. Do you recall what it was?
Where did you lose me?
We're being unfair to students.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear the because.
Yeah, I just feel that
Thank you,
we are
John.
at a point where a decision needs to be made. And I realize that that's not fair, and understand my statement. I'm not saying to you that we need to make that decision. I'm very frustrated, not with any organization. It's just that I feel like these discussions should have happened back in July. We've got kids, as you know, that are still in phase 4, and they're working out all the time because they're expecting a season. I just feel like, if we can get some direction tonight, if you say to me, Joel, if they say that we're going on the 14th, and whatever you think you can make happen within those regulations, I need to know that. If you make a decision that says, I'm not willing to risk anything, and Ginny, I'm just going to steal your question. How do we say, that you can play for the Y and not the school and keep them safe? My answer is I don't know. I know that we have smaller cohorts to make that happen, but I just need to know whether you support that or you don't, because there's so many different things happening that I just feel like we need to give something to our kids one way or the other. And sometimes no is okay, because that gives them hopes that they can move on to something else. And sometimes yes is good too, because we want to give them, especially our seniors, I know, that final going out. Off of
So-
that, I do want to say, I'm sorry, just one more thing.
Okay.
And just because there's so much, I missed something. There's a huge component here of transportation, but the bigger issue is also, as we even talk about, I just was thinking about seniors. you know, I've had a million emails saying, you know, if we get to do something, let's do senior night, the first night. I think that's wonderful. But the reality is I don't know how I can pull that off because I'm only allowed a certain number of people in a certain area, and I can't guarantee that I can get all the parents there. You know, I don't know how to, on Friday nights, if, you know, if they did have football, how do you moderate that there's only 100 people? Because the athletes, the coaches, the trainers, the people that are putting the game on count towards that 100. So that's the reason I bring that up, is that's a whole different conversation of transportation. Do we let spectators? Do we exchange money? How are we doing the spread as far as if we have people show up that don't want to listen to the rules, that don't want a mask? So there's the MPA and these entities, and then there's local decisions. And then there's just me. And if we don't laugh a little bit, then I guess it's just a crazy situation. So I threw a ton at you, and if you want to open up for questions, that's great.
Let me add one other thing though,
Sure.
Joel, if you don't mind, and you may, I had to step out for a second, but I think I sent this to the school committee. If I didn't, somebody can tell me and I'll send it out to you. But it was information from Maine School Management from the insurance trust non-member liability challenges. I did send it to you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on top of all these things, and I just feel like we keep getting backed into a corner, and I was like, somebody just make a decision. But it's and I talked to Steve Bailey after I got this, and you know, that wasn't their intent, but they, at the same time, what this document says in a nice sort of way is, we're taking a pretty huge risk, and it goes back to the question that a number of you have asked about. If we say no, we pull the plug on fall sports, and then our rec department takes over some or all of it, which you know, I've got communication with them that they would do that. So those kids are participating with different type of mix of kids, and even if we kept it here, they're going to mix with different kids, and then they're going to come back to our schools. So I don't think we can tell them that they can't do it. As a matter of fact, I hope you say they can. But this document then drove home to me today that we really have to be concerned with the decisions that we make and what kind of liability we're accepting on behalf of student and staff safety.
So the third person down on that memo that was located yesterday, her name is Alita. What's her name, Jim? Her last name? Anita, you can say her name.
Folcomer.
Folcomer, thank you.
Yep.
She is wonderful. And I sent her an email and I said to her, you know, I know you're really busy. Where do you stand with sports? What did this memo mean? And she called me right up. She's awesome. She gives us, the only reason I know her is because you have to get certain insurances to go to different venues sometimes. And she basically said that we are asking you to follow the CDC guidelines. It's very hard to have someone bring a claim forth to show this. However, if they do, you will be liable for it. So it was an eye-opener for me, because she was saying she doesn't have the right to say to us that she won't cover us, but at the same time that there's certain regulations that they want to see us follow to make sure that we're covered. And Jim and I met about it earlier this morning, and you know, would we be liable for COVID or not? It's up for debate. The person filing the claim would have to show that. However, I guess the reason I thought this document was important is because there's some very key highlighted areas, especially under risk management, which it really talks about how they expect that all academic and athletics follow the DOE regulations. That document tells me that everything I just shared with you doesn't matter, and that we're supposed to go the other direction. Whether that's a directive or not, she was very clear that it was up for interpretation.
Can I read that section? Because I think it's really important, and I think we have lots of people listening in. And probably be great to read all this stuff. We can't read it all, but I just want to read this paragraph. Can I do that, Chairperson Geyer?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Risk management. From a standpoint of risk management, we strongly recommend that members at a minimum follow the guidelines from the Governor's Office and the CDD for all academic and athletic activities. If students do get sick or do expose others, the likelihood or scope of litigation cannot be predicted in advance. But we can expect as a practical matter that if a school departs from those guidelines, the family of a student infected with COVID-19, if asserting a liability claim against the school or its leadership, will contend that the departure contributed to the illness of the death, or death, I'm sorry. Or death, yeah. So it's I don't know, it's really a huge issue. I know it's probably not looking, I mean, it's not time necessarily. I want more discussion, but I am prepared to make a recommendation.
And Jim, if you don't mind, I'd just like to add to that. In that risk management, what they're saying is that you need to follow the CDC guidelines, which from the letter that we received yesterday, they are saying that the MPA's guidelines that we would follow don't match that. So then we would move from the MPA over to the community sports and development guidelines. So just understand that they're saying that those are the guidelines, not MPA. I just want to make sure that there's a differentiation between the two.
Well, these are two totally different organizations. MSMA is coming at it from a liability responsibility standpoint, and MPA is too, but in a different. They have a different role. They have a different expectation here.
And they're trying to align them. So I guess the reason I bring that up is there's two different documents, but also if they come back and we wait and they don't align them, then it's going to be shut down anyways. So I just want you to have all the information. That's all.
So basically, Joel, you want us to be as miserable as you are.
I guess it would help me a little bit.
Okay.
It's a tough one. I think the letter yesterday was a nice summary that came from Governor Mills. But no,
This is a critical time, so that's why I don't want to come down now. Where did my sound go?
Miss Precourt, could you mute your mic, please?
You did.
Thank you. Okay, school committee folks. Discussion with Joel or the superintendent? Kristen, I know you want to start off.
I really don't. I really don't want to have to try to make sense of everything that just put in front of us in the last couple days that keep changing. Joel, I do not envy you, and I appreciate you making such a monumental effort to keep us updated as everything keeps changing. So one of the things that I just need clarification on is that when I was reading the MPA recommendations and then reading the new updated community guidelines out of Maine CDC, it seemed like one of their complaints with the MPA recommendations was the 3-foot distancing versus the state requiring 6. And one of the things that I could have missed it, certainly, but I'm wondering, are they requiring that 6-foot distancing on the field of play?
That's a great question. I can tell you today that Mr. Burnham came in from the meeting from the governor's office, and it was very clear that they are definitely saying that for golf. What it wasn't clear, and I know that doesn't help as far as we're talking about other competitive sports, is I'm not really sure. The way I read that was that they were saying to modify the game so you could stay 6 feet apart. I don't know if that's how you read it also, but that seemed like it was indicating that that was going to happen. And again, I think we will definitely get some clarification in the next couple of days. And you know, Jim said it earlier. I think that I'm sure people are tired of hearing, we just don't know, and we'll have to wait and see. So to answer your question more directly, I think they're saying that you're supposed to stay 6 feet away, but then again, I'm not sure. I'm reading into that, I think, because they don't have masks at all. So I'm assuming that it must be 6 feet. However, I don't know how you play any of those moderate risk games 6 feet apart. It just doesn't make sense to me. And honestly, Kristen, the reason I'm kind of familiar with this question is because I had an email exchange with the AD from Booth Bay today, and he's like, I'm reading this, that it's supposed to be 6 feet apart. But then again, they refer back to the 3 feet and they talk about the mask. So I guess I'm just trying to make clear that I'm not trying to be unclear. I just truly don't know. It's very confusing because there's so many different people telling us what to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I was under the same impression that the MPA, as they were modifying the different sports and the recommendations that they were making for those the moderate risk sports and how to alleviate some of the distancing issues, that they were basing it around that 3 foot. And so when the state said they were concerned with the 3 foot and wanted 6 feet, I'm thinking, how is it possible to even play
whatever out in
on those
big
sports
pile of dirt underneath
having
the
the 6 foot?
And I don't know if it's a
Sorry.
mole that, or if it's what
Hang
else
on
is
just a
there,
minute.
there's
Person on the iPhone.
I don't know
Person on the iPhone.
beaver,
Would you mute?
but not a beaver.
woodchucks or
Yeah, it could be a
groundhog.
woodchuck, but how do you get rid of something like that?
Yeah, groundhogs are like pretty decent sized little
Okay,
chipmunks.
okay, everybody stop. We're not muted. We're interrupting the meeting. Mike, I don't know if you can help me.
They muted.
Okay.
Okay. Heard about a groundhog. Okay.
Sorry. So I think I was just finishing up
Nuki.
my thought that I don't know how it would be possible to modify the games to stay 6 feet apart, and then how do you regulate that? I know that naturally when you're in a social group setting,
Right.
it's not natural to stand 6 feet apart, and as you know, a social event occurs, people migrate towards each other and then remember, oop, I need to back up. And so I just don't know how in a athletic event that it doesn't seem realistic to be able to do that. I don't know if wearing a mask, I know that they're saying that wearing a mask during the rigorous portion of the activity isn't required. I wonder if that would be an alternative, that if people would wear them while they're playing or attempt to see if that works. I know that Under Armour has come out with a mask for running that supposedly is, better in terms of air exchange, the technology that they have to safe. So if that would be worth looking into for our athletes to have that in order to be able to stay safe on the field of play, if that is what the school committee decided to do.
Agreed. And Kristen, where I'm like landing on this document is from the new guidelines from the community. Is on page 2 when they talk about the levels. So for example, if you look at soccer and field hockey, it says level 1 through 3, and then level 4 is competition within a regional area. So I guess I'm just trying to say that, to me, that gives the green light to play, but the restrictions that you're supposed to pull out of the document, I'm not clear on. And then again, I think we're on the right track trying to figure out how we can put our athletes on the field to keep others safe. My concern is what are the other folks doing too? I do have a conference meeting tomorrow. I think I'll have a better feel. I know Carraback went red this week because they had a soccer player that tested positive, so they had to take all of the soccer players and put them on quarantine for 14 days, and they're setting up for those things. So even as we do this, I guess the only reason I share that with you is because even some of our opponents may be dropping out, and we may not have a schedule anyways. But And again, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just want you to have all the information.
Ms. Bells?
I just wanted to say on page 2 of that, the community guidelines, it did say under moderate risk, sports and activities that involve intermittent close proximity or limited incidental contact. So I don't think that they're looking for people to stay 6 feet apart all the time.
Agreed. But there's another section, as you saw, Sue, I'm sure, that says, you know, do the 6 feet. Yeah.
I think that's on the sidelines, isn't it?
It is in this document, but there's also another piece of this document where it talks about, that Kristen was referring to, that if you look at the letter that came from the same organization that wrote those guidelines, they're saying that they want, you know, the 3 to 6 feet, 6 foot piece. The biggest thing out of that letter, to be honest with you too, is that it says very clearly that all the DOE regulations follow onto the buses, they follow onto the fields, they follow onto the gyms, into the gym, and it doesn't change with sports. So I don't know, that just kind of leads me down a different trail again, saying I'm back to the DOE stuff. And as you guys know, the big thing that kind of put a roadblock originally when we met with the MPA was that the PE guidance saying that we should be 14 feet away. I don't know. I just wish I was a better help, and I don't have the answers.
Something else. I was just rereading that letter, and if you're talking about the first thing that they talked about, it said, I think it was talking about spectators. It says the MPA guidelines states that spectators at events should be 3 to 6 feet apart. However, fewer than 6 feet spacing is prohibited for spectators in the guidance. So that wasn't necessarily talking about the athletes. That was talking about spectators.
No, I was talking about under the relationships to state executive orders and non-sports guidance. It says the MPA guidance do not comport with the state of the main rules. The MPA guideline states that the spectators 3 to 6, blah, 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 blah. And as you get down a little bit further, it says bus in the expectations does not follow the sports also. It's the last paragraph.
Yeah.
So I read that because the opening, I'm sorry, let me back up. The opening says the Department of Education framework for pre-K and K-12 makes an exit for the 6 foot, and it gets into the 6 foot rule, no adults in the classroom and so forth. And if you read through that paragraph, and again, Sue, I could be misreading that. It's just me, and that's the frustrating part, is we haven't even, we're on our own. I kind of go on a little bit further and I think that they're talking about the students. And I could be wrong, and that's okay. Is that what you were referring to? I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood you.
I was just trying to figure out what you were referring to, because I thought you were talking about the spectators. And then down below it says the athletes as well as adults should maintain 6 feet distance when they're not actively engaged in sports.
Gotcha. Yep.
But it then further says in the moderate risk category, it says that, it says in parentheses, it says example, wearing masks, modifying play to maintain 6 feet of physical distance, cleaning and disinfecting. So it does say right there that modifying play to maintain 6 feet of physical distance. So I think that clarification would be needed on that if we're going to try to have a fall sports season, in order to make sure that we're in compliance, in order to not have transmission issues, exposure issues, or liability issues.
Yeah, and that's the odd thing, is the letter that Sue and I were just talking about it from the people that wrote that. That's what's so confusing. So, and again, I don't know if maybe this is something that you guys need time to digest a little more, because obviously you know that it wasn't something that was withheld from you. It was just more of the fact that it changes so quickly.
And that's, I
Mr.
guess that's
Petrosky?
kind of what, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Petrosky had his hand up.
Well-
Mr. Petro, do you want to wait for the superintendent to weigh in and then?
I would love to wait for the superintendent, okay, unless he steals my thunder, okay?
Okay, thank you.
So,
Mr. Petrosky.
Joel just said the point that I was sort of getting to, but I don't want to stop the conversation. I think there are a lot of questions, but again, it feels like people who are just meeting me for the first time through Zoom are hearing me say all the time, we don't know right now, we don't know, but it's just the reality of where we're in right now. I'm really not that inept or unable to make decisions, but the circumstances are unprecedented. And this is another example of that. I think we think about how much the guidance has changed in the last 2 or 3 days. I don't think that the school committee should make any decisions tonight with respect to fall sports for high school. I would like to because honestly, if I had to make a decision, I would say let it go and figure out how to stay within the guidance we're getting from Maine School Management and MPA and all the people who are looking at it. But what I would say, I think we need to make a decision, and I think I'm prepared to support the notion that we should make a decision that we will have no middle school sports this fall. Period. And then if the rec wants to take it on, that's their thing. But high school not starting till after September 14th at the best. I mean, at the earliest. Then middle school would start after that, and given all of the things, and the MPA doesn't regulate middle school. And nearby, our neighbor Marina Cook has already made the decision not to have middle school sports. Not that we need to follow them. But I think given all of this, we could have the same exact conversation again with respect to middle school. And I don't see it. So I would recommend that we not make a decision on high school sports because we meet again on the 16th. The season at best would start on the 14th. And I think we'll have far more information before then. So I would suggest that we say no to the middle school sports.
Thank you, Mr. Petrosky. Excuse me, Mr. Petrosky.
Do you want to finish the discussion on the middle school sports first?
I'm done.
Well,
Okay, 'cause I could make a motion that we not have middle school sports this year.
why don't you go ahead and make the motion and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay. I will make a motion that we do not have middle school sports this year.
Is there a second?
I
Motion
will
failed.
second it for discussion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion by the school committee.
Excuse me.
Well, actually, yes, Ms. Shumway.
So one of the things that I had asked about earlier, and I directed it to Mrs. Chris, was the idea of having some sort of intramural program for the grades, for the middle school, and focusing it not on the traditional fall sports offerings that we have, and instead brainstorming, and perhaps this has already happened, some other activities, but brainstorming some activities that can occur and within the parameters of the new community sport guidelines that the CDC has put out, in order for our students to have some sort of outlet outside of the school day. And I know that Mrs. Chris and her staff, they have spent a tremendous amount of time creating cohorts for their students and wanting to maintain the integrity of those cohorts, and the risk of losing that integrity by having students within cohorts participating in extracurricular programming. But with that being said, I'm wondering if something could be developed that wouldn't compromise those cohorts, like individual activities like golf, like like a tennis program, something like that, that isn't traditional fall offerings, but it could be something that gets our kids outside, outside of the school day in order to release some of the stress that these new protocols are bound to create. That's my question.
Ms. Chris.
I would defer to Joel because he would need to create it, develop it, and implement it. My gig is not sports. My gig is academics. And I can tell you that as hard as my staff and I have worked over the last month to create the safest and best possible educational world for 200 Winthrop Middle School students within a building, if we don't follow the same guidelines beyond the school day as a Winthrop public school system, that I'm not sure how many staff members will actually stay. If kids go beyond our school day and do whatever they do on their own, that's their decision. That's their parents' decision. We have no control over that, and we have to live with it or die with it. That's the cue here. We will die with it. If Joel can come up with something where students, if we, not the why, if we are presenting those, and if we pay stipends to the people who are running them, because no staff member is going to step up and do anything for free because they're already teaching in class and remotely and everything else that we've asked them to do. And I refuse to ask my staff to do anything else. That will need to come from the superintendent and the board. If Joel can come up with a program that fits the guidelines, that fits every requirement that we are asking my staff to do within the 7:15 to 2:15 day, and all of those cohorts stay constant, then I could support it. Other than that, I cannot. And I'm not sure my staff will support it either. You can't expect us to run things one way during the school day and then run things a different way for athletics, which do not even have to be offered. We are an educational system. I don't know how many staff will stay to do that. If those kids are doing whatever they do, and we are allowing that, if we're going to allow that, then I should be allowed to have kids have breaks whenever they want to. I should be allowed to have kids going two-way in the hallways. I should be allowed to have more than 2 kids in the bathroom at a time. I should be allowed to have more than 50 kids in a cafeteria. Oh, excuse me, 48, because I have 2 lunchroom people. So now I'm up to 4 lunches because I can't even have 50 kids in my cafeteria getting lunch. I am not in favor of anything that cannot follow the exact same guidelines that we are following within our school day. I'm pretty adamant about this. You have entrusted upon us to create this environment from 7:15 to 2:15. Why are we going to expect anything less outside of the school day? I do not understand that at all.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. Ms. Dykett, do you still, I saw your hand up.
Yep. And I was gonna say something similar, not as well as Kristen did. I really do worry about the mental health of some of these kids. And Karen, I really do respect a lot of what you said. You know, we had our first student day today and it was tough. I don't know if we're doing everything we possibly can. We're trying. The reality is these kids go home and they play together with no masks on. And I know you just said it. There's nothing that we can do outside of the school. But my fear is if there is not something for these kids to do after school, especially the ones that need that movement, that sports, that athletic, that physicality, then we are going to see different students in our schools. And that really worries me. The mental health of some of these kids already is slipping for those athletes. I also worry, and someone had mentioned this, you know, what's going to happen. And I know obviously we're in a pandemic and I get that, you know, what's going to happen for the future of some of these kids. Middle school is often a time where they're able to explore sports. High school, it's cut and dry. You make it, you don't make it. Sometimes that's all these kids get for exposure is in those middle school years. So what can we do? And maybe those cohorts in those phys ed classes or something can be different so that they can get that during the academic day with the regulations. But I do really worry about the mental health of some of these kids if we don't offer some sort of an outlet.
Ms. Chris, do you want to respond, or you want to let Joel
I'd
respond?
like to respond to Jana. I 100% agree with you. I understand that these kids need it and we should be offering it, but I do not believe that we should not be consistent in what we are offering. If we can offer something that has the same guidelines of the CDC and the DOE, and Joel can do it. Hi, Joel. Your job, not mine. If Joel can create it and implement it, I'm all over it. But if we're going to say that kids can go play soccer or field hockey, and whether they're masked or not, that is not equitable. And I think that you're going to see teachers rebelling that they have to follow all of these guidelines when this school board is saying that at 2:30, we can change all the rules. I'm okay if you want sports, then let's just change the rules between 7:15 and 2:15.
I don't think anybody, Ms. Chris, was implying that we would be changing the rules. I was suggesting that there be some sort of structure that would comply with the guidelines that you've put in place. I made that pretty clear in what I was saying. So that was what I was asking, if there were some activities that could be done safely outside of the school day.
Mr. Stoneton.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no reason not to explore it. I'm just going to be very upfront and honest with you. When I'm reading these guidelines, I don't see how you put anything out there that would be any form of a team sport, unless you require students to be masked. And if that's okay, then we can certainly explore that also. You know, I think Karen referred to stipends. If we don't have fall sports, we certainly will have access to some of those things. But I guess my guidance from you folks would be, you know, if we're going with what Karen says, then we're going to go back to what the DOE says, because that's what we're doing today. And I need everybody on board that they understand that that's 14 feet outside if you're doing any sort of activity that's getting your heart rate up before we do those things, which, you know, really, as you guys were talking about earlier, Kristen and Sue, you know, modifying games and those types of things certainly would come into play.
I have a quick question here from Kelly Cooper, off topic. I have a quick question. Someone just told me that Winthrop decided to go fully distance learning. Can you please confirm? Denied. We're not. We're offering remote education, but we're in person. For the moment, we're in person, 4 days a week. Okay, so back. Mr. Petrosky, do you want to?
Well, I made the motion because I thought it was worthwhile to have the discussion. I happen to personally support continuing the sports program, or at least continuing those sports that we could do under the guidelines. And maybe that's cross country, maybe it is golf, but I think there are some that could be done. Ironically, I can remember the year that the hockey players felt they didn't want to be football players or anything else because it was conflicting with their season. So they ended up all running cross country. It's one of the best cross country teams that we ever had. They never came back again, but they at least ran that 1 year, and that's kind of interesting. I want to just bring up this other thing, Joel, because I believe that some of this discussion tonight is all for nothing. And the reason is simply this. The White House has announced tonight that they have a vaccination that will be available sometime right around the 1st of November. Now, I'm not sure, besides the announcement, what that means, but it's what we've been talking about, or at least some of my group has been talking about, saying, how is that going to affect people? But I can tell you that it means to me that we had talked before about moving some of our sports into the spring. That may be a good possibility, because if you allow for the 30 to 60 days for the vaccination to prove its worth, then you're going to be able to take and start sports soon, right after the first of the year. So that also will affect middle school sports too. I mean, I'm just saying that the whole picture can change on us very suddenly if this vaccine is accepted. But at least the White House is out there tonight publicly saying they've got it, they plan to start doing it, and start using it here sometime at the end of next month.
Joe, if you look at the recommendations that we created, you'll see underneath football, the committee that I'm a part of, we recommended two things if we could not make things happen in the fall. Number one was to make athletic cohorts, which was to insinuate that folks that are going to play athletics remote learn only, so they could take the inherent risk and not bring it back to the population. If that was not accepted by schools, the third one was to move the sport to the spring, which I was part of a discussion today that's gaining quite a bit of momentum. They're looking at possibly starting, and this is just information, this is not what's happening. They are looking at starting possibly winter sports January 1 and giving a 2-week break and going right into fall sports, and then extending the spring season deep into the summer to finish up the spring season, so folks would not have to make a choice between sports that may overlap if we move things. So those are some recommendations that we're looking at. If you look back in the minutes in the MPA, I've been saying it for over a month. Let's move it to the spring, because I'd rather take some time than start it and have to shut it down and lose any opportunity. So that's certainly on the table at the state level, is what I'm trying to share with you.
I think it's great, and that's the way that I would proceed.
Yep.
I think that all of this is going to happen. Okay.
I need to move forward, or we need to move forward on the motion. So I'm wondering if there should be an addition to the motion that would make it palatable for folks. If we were to agree with the cancellation of middle school fall sports as we know them, but direct the athletic director to investigate offering some activities as long as they follow CDC rules.
Can I have a question? Can I
Ms.
ask?
Bells.
Are we going to read the comments from the public at this point?
Well, I can do that. Yep. Anybody else have a thought about what I just said?
I think you're on the right track. I think that's the way we should go.
Okay, lots of comments. I think I have to back up here a little bit. Hang on. First, I have to find my mouse. Hang on, we're having a little technical difficulty. Huh. Okay. Okay, my mouse is not going to work. Kristen, guess who
Yeah.
gets to read these comments?
Oh, great. Okay.
But until I can, my mouse is not working. I have to scroll back up a little bit.
Okay. So, yep, I have to go back to, this is talking about the schools. Hold on. All right. First, sport related. Melissa Brewer thanks Joel for sharing all of this to our community. Dr. McConnell said, I hope that liability does not trump the right thing. Melissa Brewer commented guidelines that PE is 14 feet in schools outside with no mask. And then Mrs. Chris said, I'll reminder that masks only protect others, not ourselves. Will all schools do the same? And then Mike Griswold said, given what was mentioned about the possibility of certain sports like football to hold inter-squad scrimmages at the very least, is there any kind of model to hold athletics following an in-house intramural format for Winthrop students only? I know that it is not ideal, nor will it ever replace the normal sports season as we know it, but could it possibly give students at least an opportunity to play? Us as school staff are the most trained and equipped to follow through on all guidelines for our safety. And Melissa Brewer agreed. And then Mike Griswold continued, and or could this apply to middle school sports since they seem to be a no-go? That's a lot of athletes left out. Jessie Stover Tyler said, my daughter hangs out with kids that are not in her academic cohort. How does this change with her playing sports with those same group of friends? She and her friends are craving a positive and structured social time. And then Just Kim, no last name, says fall sports should be parents' choice. Jessie Stover Tyler says at least let sports happen even if it's just skills and drills between themselves. Carla said outdoor activities and indoor activities have different virus exposure and should have different rules. Jane Precourt said, addressing it to me, I think we're making this harder than we have to. The state website today published guidelines for sports. Why don't we use them? We already addressed Kelly Hooper's off-topic question. And then Jane Precourt commented again, and while I understand Karen's point of view, and I'm always most concerned with academics, discontinuing all middle school sports is going to be a huge emotional blow to our students. And you are fooling yourself if you think controlling sports is going to mean all variables are controlled. You aren't, you still have daycares and all sorts of things. Canceling all middle school sports will alienate a lot of middle school students. Karen talked about staff leaving. I could tell you that many students will leave Winthrop Public Schools and with them funding. Kim said kids can't stay in a bubble. Again, kids need sports and an outlet during the very stressful time for them. Safety precautions can always be top priority. And then, oh, we keep going. Okay. Hold on, I think I have, okay. It looks like it's a phrase. So I was thinking that maybe it was the second half of something that someone said, but it says, I'm assuming it says is meaning students or kids are craving a positive and structured social time. That's from Jessie Stover Tyler. And then, oh, Cara Bilodeau, the Winthrop Middle School boys soccer coach, commented, I would support skills and drills only following the CDC guideline of keeping kids 14 feet apart. I feel strongly that we can modify drills to fit the guidelines. If the school is willing to provide cohorts, we can make provisions to ensure the safety of students while remaining consistent with the school. And then the last comment that I have is from Jane Precourt. Again, we can't expect our teachers to do even more and host fall all sorts of new activities, which we haven't planned for, they are already under enough pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's everything so far.
Thank you, Ms. Shumway.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, my mouse works now, Ms.
Oh,
Shumway.
how convenient.
I'm sure there'll be more to read. Not correctly, but it's working.
So
Other comments?
So my one other thought, real quickly, is that if Joel, if we're asking you to look at creating, this kind of intramural alternate, my request would be is poll our current teachers, poll our staff, and see what they could bring to the table that would fit in that lower risk type of activities, because we wouldn't have to necessarily reinvent, and there might be something that our current staff is willing to provide for our students, and use that as kind of a jumping off point. That would be my suggestion if we're not going to follow the traditional fall sports offerings.
Agreed. I think I would start with the low risk, and that is probably the activities that we would be able to offer if people just wanted to take a glimpse of what would fit in.
Ms. Bells?
Why couldn't we do like what Coach Bilodeau said and have the soccer team still do skills and drills at least? I'm pretty sure the girls soccer coach would be interested in something like that as well.
Joel, you want to respond to that?
No, actually I don't, because that's your decision. I'm not trying to slough it off here. It's just she's saying if that's what you guys decide to do, then I will do that.
Yep.
I guess when I called on you, Mr. Stoneton, it was more along the line of is it in the realm of possibility that we can comply with CDC stuff and offer it as Ms. Bells suggested?
My answer would be tentatively yes, because I would have to take a look at what that's going to be. I want to be very careful. I think, and you guys are former educators now, and kids. I think we need to be very upfront of what that's going to look at. Like, if we're saying keep your masks off and be 14 feet away in soccer and do skills and drills, that's more than just your inner foot making a pass. Or we're not going to be doing corners and those types of things. I caution that, and I support it. At the same time, I just think we need to be very upfront. Now we can change things. We do decide to put masks on, and you can get within 6 feet. That does change things also. But that's it.
Does anyone want to offer an addendum to the motion on the floor?
I just want to respond to something I just saw real quick. It said 14 feet outside. The reason that I referred that is because I understood that the directive was to follow DOE regulations because it's an extension of the school day. And if we are outside doing anything that makes your heart rate go up, as well as your respiration, you're supposed to be 14 feet apart without a mask.
Question?
Hang on. I thought I'd just read a couple comments if that's okay. Makes sense to have fall middle school coaches continue to work with their teams. And then why 14 feet apart outdoors?
That's the one I was referring to.
Right.
And I just want to be very clear also that I do not expect all fall coaches to participate. I have had communications that they are not comfortable if we do.
Right. Again, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That's okay. I just was going to say that it was from a middle school level as well as the high school level.
Okay. Ms. Precourt says, again, the state published guidelines for sports today. It's on their website, and they wouldn't do that if they expected all sports to be canceled. Why are we not talking about how to amend sports?
I was gonna kind of something similar to that. We keep saying we're gonna follow the DOE, but I thought the DOE said we could follow the other one, the DHHS or the community sports. I'm confused.
Mr. Staunton?
Where I was coming from, Sue, is that I thought after Mrs. Chris commented that it seemed like the board was saying that the only way we're going to explore those activities is if we followed what we did from 7:15 to 2:15.
Okay.
If we were going to do anything after 2:15, that would still be DOE regulations. Now, if you decide that you're going to go the other direction and say that you're going to follow community sports, that does change the regulations that we are following. And I think that's what Mrs. Precourt is referring to, those rules that came out yesterday from DHHS and Economic and Community Development.
Okay, thank you. I just, yeah.
Welcome to my world. I totally get it. Like the second you think you've got it figured out,
Yeah.
you know, and you have to laugh about it because it's become so absurd. It's just that, you know, I literally was writing that email to you folks yesterday when Dr. Shah came on the TV and they laid it right out there, and Dave E from Channel 13 asked the question, and it was like, holy cow, here we go. So don't apologize. I get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm with Mrs. Precourt. Is, you know, if that's what's coming down from the governor's office, why isn't that good enough? I just don't. I thought that's what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Petrosky.
I just wanted to add, thank you, that if we can continue, I would like to see it go beyond though just skills and drills. If there are other schools nearby that want to continue their programs, that we should have some kind of a schedule and have some kind of competition. If anything, it's a learning experience for all of us.
Mr. Superintendent Hodgkin.
So I just want to, this is the way I anticipated this conversation was going to go tonight. There's nobody more supportive of co-curricular, extracurricular, extra activity offerings than me. My suggestion for supporting the canceling middle school athletics is based upon two things. First of all, I think it's not realistic to expect that we're going to create in a very short period of time the types of things that are being asked of Joel and our staff to do that. And the second thing is it's not going to is that we already know we have a commitment from the Y. This is a little bit challenging to say, but we have a commitment for them to do exactly what people are asking about, to put together programs, give kids opportunities, keep them involved. Lonnie's already said that they would do that. And I have to be honest with you, it doesn't make me totally comfortable that he's saying that, because my concerns about the safety of our kids and students that are doing things after school and all of the people have commented, we can't control that. I'm fully aware of that. But when we take on the responsibility ourselves to create different types of activities or to come up with different ways for them to do intramurals or get together, and we own that as a school, we also own everything that goes with that. And for me, we have an alternative for the middle school students in our rec department and the Y. And am I comfortable with the fact that they would offer things and those same kids would be coming onto our buildings? No, it's the same thing that a couple of the parents had talked about. If the kids are hanging out with their friends who aren't necessarily in the same grade, certainly not in the same cohort, you know, we're not going to stop that from happening. But I think to the extent that we stop taking on all the responsibility as a school, when it's not it's a greater risk than it feels like people are willing to admit or understand. But we have an organization that's not the school that is saying they're willing to do that. I don't know why we would take that on as a school.
Ms. Dykett?
Knowing two people who are very into the YMCA, a couple of directors who are related to me, they want to reach out to schools to help. They want schools to use their facilities. They want schools to use their programming. They were able to run summer programming all summer in Maine with no COVID issues, or no COVID cases, excuse me. Obviously they COVID issues because they had to mask and everything else. They have been doing this all summer. Many of our athletes have been playing all summer in sports with outdoors, with no issues, no outbreaks. I'm on a couple of different sites, and that's what I'm hearing pretty much all over Maine, although Joel did just say that a soccer kid in Carabec tested positive, which I didn't. I just heard about that tonight. And not to say it's not going to happen. We all know that, even with all the precautions we take. So I agree. If the YMCA can help us out with this, you know, let them. Let's help them help us out with this as well. That's my point of view with that.
Hey, Joel, what set of rules would the YMCA conduct themselves?
I think there's a couple things you can do. I have the facility use agreements that I received from them yesterday. You could allow that to happen now, or you could say, yep, we'll let this happen as long as you follow these guidelines. The YMCA, I think, allows you to, it allows you to control cohorts more, meaning that if you're going to do middle school sports and you're going to look for a competitive schedule, I'm just saying, if you put it up high here, you're definitely going to be mixing folks into the mix that you would not be looking for. With the YMCA, there's going to be a different new cohort of athletes only that would allow you to control a little bit more of the exposure to other communities. We, taking it a step further, this is my 7th year. Over the last 7 years, we've put up the nets. We've painted for our athletes at the middle school with the permission of the school board and Mrs. Chris, if they were comfortable using those resources in my time to help with that. I think that would be a nice way to not only help them, but try to keep things meshed together. So I realize that's a little bit further of what you were asking, Jenny, but I think that's the advantage of using them.
Thank you. Superintendent Hodgkin.
Well, Sue Bell's had her hand up first, I think, so I'm happy to let her go first.
I just wanted to know what they would be offering.
As far as I know, they would be offering everything but football. They would be offering soccer. Let me back up. I'm sorry. They would be offering field hockey and soccer. Football is not being offered at any level in the state of Maine, from what came out yesterday from the state, in my mind. But decision.
Hang on a minute, please, Joel.
Yep.
Miss Red, could you mute your mic, please? I think it's Miss Red.
Are you okay with this? Like you're okay with me?
Thank you. Well, I don't know where she went. Okay, Joel.
I was just trying to say that we'd have to still make a decision on cross country, because that would be the one sport that they don't offer. They don't offer football, but that is not something that's going to happen regardless, because of what the governor's rules, guidelines that came out yesterday. The hard thing about all of this, and I just want to throw this out here, is that this has been completely unregulated from the point of view of the YMCA and all of these other organizations all summer. And I was part of a conversation today that very clearly is frustrated with that. But also was relaying the message back to us that that's not going to be the case. You know, I said it earlier today, you're going to see some outside organizations lose the privilege to provide what they have been this summer. That is going to happen. So in the Y, as far as I know, is not one of them. I don't know that for sure, but I think that that's certainly something that I would recommend pursuing if we decide not to do team sports at the middle school.
I'll read a couple of comments. My son went to YMCA camp most of the summer. This is from Jesse Stover Tyler. It was well run and I felt as though he was safe. They were amazing about reminding kids to wear masks when needed. Jane Precourt says scrapping middle school sports is arbitrary. It just seems like something to get off our plate if we are waiting to decide on high school. I'd like to know what the rush is on middle school. They should be treated the same way. Kristen writes, athletes have been playing all summer, including ice hockey inside with no cases. Students from multiple counties, no COVID cases. And Grace says, will they be offering for all middle school ages? They typically only go through 6th grade, at least for field hockey, meaning the Y.
So to answer that real quick, Ms. Geyer, I know from talking with Lonnie, as well as having the facility agreement sent yesterday, that is going up to the 8th grade. That's an expansion. We had the conversation that if something changes and that the school would be offering sports at the middle school level, that they would change that and retract that request. So this is being done in case middle school sports do not happen at the school.
Miss Precourt thinks that I missed one of her comments, a good one. So I'm sorry.
While you're looking, can I ask Joel a question?
Sure.
Joel, will they be playing games?
The YMCA?
Yeah.
I can't say yes or no because I'm not sure how the Y operates as far as how their schedules go. Maybe some parents that have been part of that know. And I also don't know if that's going to change because of the guidelines. If you were using the guidelines, the answer would be yes. Not only inter-squad scrimmage, but field hockey and soccer are recommended to play teams that are within the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I think I found it from Miss Precourt. Kids are going to play. They can play through the district or they will find another way to play. You can argue that offering amended sports is a safer option for your school than not.
I think Mr. Hodgkin has something to say. Just going on.
Oh, there you go. Superintendent Hodgkin.
Ms. Bells and I raised our hand at the same time, but
okay, sorry.
You got in this time. But
yep.
I guess I want to go back to actually one of the other comments. I think it was from Mrs. Precourt as well. There's no specific rush in making this decision about middle school tonight. For me, the difference is there's several differences, but it's probably not a bad idea to wait and see what happens over the, high school sports would not start until practices start on the 14th. There's nothing to say we can't defer or wait on middle school sports. The problem with that for me is that the MPA doesn't specifically regulate, not even specifically, they don't regulate middle school sports. So there's no harm. My thinking of making this recommendation tonight was based upon my conversation with the rec, that they would begin the process of getting our kids involved. And everything that people are saying about their experiences this summer, I 100% agree with.
Yeah, I tried to seduce you while you was on the phone with my sexy dance, but you were having none of it. You wouldn't even look at me. You were like, yeah.
Person on the iPhone, would you please mute your mic?
I don't want to be on video.
person on the iPhone, would you please mute your mic? I think it was Sexy Dan. I don't know. There we go. Thank you.
Can't make this stuff up.
So that's right. So it's so hard to have this conversation on Skype. I mean, on Zoom, because it's, it just comes across as, I don't know, different than we certainly intended. As I said before, I knew this conversation was going to kind of go this way. I think it's unfair that we're being asked to do this, because I've shared with anybody who listened to me over this past week that I have 4 children, and my 2 boys in particular were really good athletes, very competitive athletes, and I can guarantee you in the Hodgkin household that if we had to make the decision, my kids would be very clear about the fact that they don't care what the risks are. They want to do that. And I'm not seeing anybody really sort of saying that we should move in this direction, having to make a decision about something as emotional as high school or sports in general, not just high school. Sports here in Maine is a lose-lose. I can't in good conscience say that it isn't without huge risks that I individually am not willing to take. And so I was looking at ways that we could do things that were sort of tried and true. And I knew everything that people were commenting about the Y programs this summer. I know were true. I know they were all run. I met with Jeff Gleason. I met with Lonnie. And so I was looking for a way to if we're going to get our middle school sports, if we're going to do anything with middle school students, I should say that way, it probably isn't going to start because there's, until after the 14th, and we can revisit this at that point. At this point, this decision may be taken out of our hands, but I was kind of hoping to get going with the Y and the rec department in terms of getting our kids involved in something. But Mrs. Precourt is exactly right. There is no hurry to do this, but we are definitely going to start school without the sports kind of starting, and then we can wait and see on the 16th how this shakes out.
Question for you. Would the Y start before school started anyway?
Probably not. It's just the other thing that I think is lost in this conversation, and Mrs. Chris brought it up, whether we do something different or we go with what would have been planned. If we do something different, it's not going to, Joel is good. He's really, really good, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. So same thing with the Y. They're not going to move forward with their plan. They're thinking about it and thinking that the school committee might make this decision, but it's going to take them some time too.
Jenny Moody comments that the Y would be starting September 12th. I guess I'm going to weigh in, Sue.
Okay, go ahead.
I haven't at all this evening. I'm going to weigh in a little bit. I think that as a school system, it's wrong for our school system to have 2 different sets of standards, one for during the day and one for after school. It makes 0 sense to me entirely. On the other hand, I watched people try to come to some sort of decisions about our student athletes in the spring, and people kept on putting off making the decision in the spring, another week, another 2 weeks, another week, another 2 weeks, because they so badly wanted to offer the students some sort of sports activity. And then we know it just finally they had to cancel it. I see that going in the same direction right now. I would prefer to, I would vote for this motion, because what it would do is it would allow the Y to go into motion and start giving those folks an outlet as of the 12th, which I think would be really beneficial rather than waiting and waiting and waiting as we go down this road as DOE, CDC, DHHS, MPA, MSSA, and MSBA all try to figure out what rules we're going to operate under. I am uncomfortable. I am a little uncomfortable sending folks to the Y because we have no control over what set of standards they use. No matter what you think about liability and insurance, I think that you have to take that into consideration whether you want to or not. There's no way I want to put our school system in a libelous situation. That would be irresponsible of me to do. So with all of those thoughts, I would be willing to vote for this motion as Joe expressed it. Sue, you're on.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say now.
You're not that old.
I know. I can't remember. Sorry.
I'll read, let's see.
Oh, wait, I think I remember.
Okay.
So, no, I guess it doesn't matter after what you said, because I was going to say, couldn't we just move ahead with at least the skills and drills and stuff for the coaches? But after what you just said, maybe that's not appropriate.
Mike Griswold says, from what I recall for the Y programs, playing actual games are to be announced. A lot of programs focus on skills and drills to start with potential of in-house games on Saturdays. The topic of playing other towns is an explored topic until October.
Oh, good.
Jenny Moody for field hockey and soccer. Jane Precourt, the difference is that during the day, the kids are inside a building and sports happen outdoors, very different things. I think parents would be willing to wait an extra 4 days. It's not exactly true, Ms. Precourt. Physical education classes outside have to maintain 14 feet. Is that correct, Joel?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry. Not me
So
admit.
that has to be amended a bit, Ms. Precourt. Carla Souther, hang on here. Exactly, Jane. Let's see this. Let's use the science. The virus doesn't spread as easily outside. That's why we have outside dining and outside again. I think I addressed this also. We are considering that only Wyoming has a lower rate of COVID-19 than me. I thought it was Vermont, but yes, I've already mentioned that if anybody can make it work, it would be Maine and Vermont. I mentioned that earlier tonight. Is tonight only going to be discussing sports? I don't think there's a real lot more to, well, all of the administrators are going to tell us how things are going. And there are questions around that as well. Okay, Ms. Bells.
I just wanted to, I know we've talked a lot about sports, but how we decide sports, is that going to affect things like theater and singing and band and all of that as well?
That's a whole different conversation and set of rules.
Okay.
I can tell you just as far as even having chorus and band in the schools is going to be extremely difficult.
That's another 14-footer, isn't it, Mr. Staunton?
As far as if, again, by DOE, yes.
Thank you.
I'll say, Sue, that there's been a lot of conversation that if we're taking a look at these things for sports, that extracurricular is not just sports, that we need to also be looking at sports. So I can tell you just that MPA is also reviewing those.
Okay, thank you.
I think we need to call this question. Anybody? All pretty quiet here, folks.
If I say yes, does that help, Jenny?
I think actually it would. Mr. Petrosky. Mr. Petrosky, unmute yourself. Mr. Petrosky, unmute yourself. There you go.
Well, I was talking to the dog and I didn't know if it was
Okay.
an appropriate thing to do. But I will move the question to get it to a vote.
Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Can you repeat the motion for me?
Yes, the motion was to cease. Well, I could have Joe or Colleen read it back, but as I remember it, the motion was to cease middle school sports.
For 2020, correct?
This fall.
Say for this fall.
I
Yes,
thought
thank-
that got amended.
It did
That's
not
what
get
it-
amended. I offered
Okay,
a
thank you.
possibility, but nobody took me up on it.
Okay.
Okay, so is to cease middle school sports for this fall. I'll call the roll. Ms. Shumway,
No.
Mr. Petrosky,
No.
Ms. Dykett,
No.
Ms. Bells,
No.
Ms. Geyer, yes. So motion is defeated 4-1. Get my hammer. There we go. And so what kind of direction then are we going to give our superintendent and our athletic director, folks? Do you want to say, let's wait until the 14th?
How would that affect scheduling for Joel? If he's
Well,
looking
as
to
far
schedule things.
What
we
kind
have
of schedule?
I'm sorry, there's a delay there. Did you need me to speak?
Go ahead, Joel.
As far as schedules go, we've already had 3 or 4 schools opt out. Maranicook was one, obviously, but Coney, Carabec, and it just continues on. I would be looking to make a schedule probably after sports started, and more importantly, honestly, this week, because there's RSU2, which is Monmouth and Halldale. They're meeting tomorrow night. I think I would have more information. So I'm not doing a good job answering your question. I'm sorry. If we waited until the 16th, when the next time you guys met, that's fine.
Okay.
As far as middle school goes. As far as high school goes, if we continue on with that, then they're just going to continue into the preseason, and we'll wait and see what happens.
All right. I just didn't want to put you in a hard spot under the gun.
I appreciate that. Thank you, because I am out of time.
Mr. Hodgkin, did you have a comment?
Yeah, all of the sentiment that the community is saying, I totally agree with. And so maybe, while my gut tells me this is probably not the best thing to do, maybe we get our coaches who are already signed up to basically at the middle school, because it's not guided by the NPA. We get them to start having some practices where they can do the drills and keeping people apart, and essentially the stuff that the Y was suggesting they do for us. But there's no competition, so we have some more control over that. We can give the kids the ability to be busy and athletic and learn some skills. And then 2 things might happen. The state might pull the plug on us, or 2, we might, we might just continue and figure it out. From my perspective, that's a way better option than to say to Joel, go make something up and find something for our kids to be busy and stuff, because I don't think it's as simple as people might think it is.
I think that would be great if Joel's willing to do it, as long as we comply with CDC.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly make that happen. I want to be very upfront honest. which I think I have been the whole time. And I've been in communication with my coaches at the middle school, and they have all the information that you have, and they know that we're having this meeting tonight. I don't know how many coaches are going to come back. I'm aware of one that will not be participating. And then I am going to put you on the spot, and I'm sorry, but you also are going to have to make a decision if you're going to pay those coaches regardless of the outcome of the season, because they will be signing a contract for a stipend. And that may affect what we decide to do to aid other folks. And that's totally fine with me, because again, if the governor does pull the plug and we continue with skills and drills, then that stipend's in place and they're willing to take that on. And that might be the alternative to a season. I don't know the answer to that at this time. And if that is the direction you want to go, I will spend some time tomorrow communicating with my coaches.
Well, there's absolutely no way that I would endorse not paying your coaches.
It's good to know.
The rest of you concur?
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck with all of that.
It's athletics, man. That's how it goes.
Only this year, I hope.
Me too.
Oh, my goodness.
Burning up quick this year.
So that's the superintendent's report.
I do want to, I think if the principals are still on, we may want to let them go.
Karen left us a message. She said she was signing off. Okay, mouse. Okay, mouse, please. There we go. I know. There we go. Hi all, this is from Miss Chris. Hi all, I need to comment on the PD days for the Winthrop Middle School, as I will be signing off at this point. All is great. Want to give kudos to the high school tech for their participation. We are overwhelmed and moving forward. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Chris. I assume that there's, well, Jana, do you want to make a quick thing about the finance report?
Yeah, let me pull up. Sue and I, oh, am I unmuted?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, all right, sorry. Sue and I got a bunch of warrants done. We were all caught up as of when we did them last week, and I think Amanda said another one was coming out. But we got 26A, 26B, 26C, 26D, 26E done, which concludes last year. And then for this year, we got 1, 2, 2A, 3, 3A, and 4 done for our regular warrants. We got payroll, 26A, 26B, and 26C done from last year. And then this year we have 1, 2, 3, 3A, 3B, 3C, 4, and 4A done. I will also say that Amanda was in there working when we went in there, and we did chat with her about some of the COVID stuff and how that was all being organized, and they have been working with the town in order to do that, because obviously we're seeing a lot of bills coming in for COVID expenses, and we just wanted to make sure that those are being accounted for somehow separately and how it was being done. And so Amanda explained that to us as well, and just appreciate all that work that's going in to keep that all separate so that we can get our full reimbursement.
Thank you. You folks are amazing, and I'm so glad that you raised that question about the COVID and the funding. So thank you. Nothing on policy, anything on negotiations, Ms. Shumway?
Sorry, I was muted. No, nothing on negotiations at this time.
Thank you. Anything on curriculum, Superintendent Hodgkin?
No, but I know we probably don't want to put her on the spot tonight, but Mrs. White has hit the ground. There she is. Hit the ground running and done a great job of getting herself involved in the professional development days. So I don't know if she wants to comment or not.
I'd just like to echo what Karen said. I sat in on both the professional development, some of it with the grade school that was teacher run, as they looked at exploring Seesaw as their cross-platform for pre-K 3 and Google Classroom, both at the elementary level and from the high school, who streamed into the middle school. And so that was really tremendous work that was done by our teachers for our teachers. So that was pretty awesome. And I think it's going to help create a really consistent pathway as our students are looking at enrolling remotely. And if plans change as the year progresses, I think we're setting a really strong foundation with some really dynamic educators right now. I'm pretty proud to have been part of those days and sit in on them and see all the work that's being done across the buildings.
Thank you, Ms. White. And Superintendent Hodgkin, anything on the renovation, new construction, or grade school maintenance?
No, there's nothing at this point.
Okay.
No, actually, I will say I did reach out to Stan Sawyer, who I mentioned earlier, because he works with the with facilities and all that type of stuff, and I wanted to schedule some time with him to go over the report, the architect's report, and looking at some options. He's the best person to do that, but he's currently tied up with the CRF funds.
Thank you. And now the administrators will all comment on their professional development so far. So Mr. Ladd, would you like to take it away?
Where is he? Yep, there he is.
There he is. Well, there's Mr. Campbell. Oh, there's Mr. Ladd. I got him. Great. Go ahead, Mr. Ladd. Mr. Ladd can't hear me. Mr. Ladd, your turn. Oh, I'm good.
Mr. Ladd, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Is there something on your monitor that might be turned off or muted or?
I'm going to let Mr. Ladd. Oh, now you're muted, Mr. Ladd. Can you unmute yourself? Now you're unmuted. Oh, now you're not. Huh. Now you're unmuted. I think we're going to have to forego Mr. Ladd's report.
Mr. Ladd, you may need to just sign off and then sign back in. That sometimes helps.
Thank you, Ms. Fawcett. Ms. Randall, do you have any report to help out Mr. Ladd?
Miss Randall was not in school today. She was
Okay.
home, so I do not think she's
Okay.
with us.
Ms. White, do you have anything else to say? Mr. Campbell, you're on.
Well, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Campbell. We can hear you well.
Yes.
Yes. That's great.
So the trainings here at the high school have been going very well and been very beneficial for opportunities for our new staff to interact with our veteran staff. We've taken the time to go through Power School and how to help teachers set up their grade book and take attendance, things like that. We spent some time going through Google Classroom with our teachers and the various aspects of that. And it was a good thing we did. We discovered that several of our settings needed to be adjusted so that our students could gain control of the class. And yeah, it was kind of an eye-opening experience for the teachers as well. So
yeah,
teachers have been working on their own websites on the high school page. We are trying to get them to be more uniform. We've asked teachers to make sure that there's ways to contact them on the pages. We want a separate page for each class. The teacher schedule will be there. List of materials, I know we sent those home in the mail and it's on the website, but we also want the teachers to put those on their web pages as well. We're asking the course syllabi to be put up, calendar of assignments so parents can check in to see what's owed, when it's owed. And we're also suggesting they put links that would be to valuable resources for the courses they teach. So the work's going well.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. No questions? Okay. Mr. Staunton, do you have anything else you want to say?
Oh,
Are
I
you
get lots.
tired?
We'll talk after the principals. They've been waiting quite a while, so let's let them.
Okay.
Please.
Mr. Ladd, how are you doing now?
I'm not sure. Is it
Oh,
working?
good. Yeah.
Oh, good. I don't know what was going on. I've had all kinds of issues here tonight. It's been going in and out and off and on. And so we've been wicked busy here at the grade school. There have been lots of great presentations that have taken place, primarily from in-house people. In fact, I guess the only day we had sort of some outside expertise was the first day when Mr. Hodgkin and our presenter from the Trauma-Informed Practices, Brittany Ray, was here. So that was on Wednesday. Filled up that day. On Thursday, Chef Aaron filled the staff in on all of the school nutrition adjustments that we'll need to be making. And I went through all of the frequently asked questions, the short form, the long form, some of the daily operating procedures with all of the staff. On Friday, Jolene did, the assistant principal, Mrs. Randall, she did a presentation for both groups in terms of Lucy Calkin's units of study virtual teaching resources. So she was able to review with all of the teachers the resources we have available for our reading program we're implementing, which are specifically designed to ensure that we have the resources for both in-person and remote learning. Let's see, that was the first week. And then Monday, Mrs. Biddlecom, who's our music teacher, and Mrs. Bailey, our art teacher, they've been preparing for months, I think, at this point, and they presented the Google G Suite training for the grade school staff. And then Michelle Urso, who's a special ed tech, has attended special training to become a presenter for the Seesaw platform. So she was able to present for both sections of the staff here on Seesaw training. On Tuesday, Terry Charette, our occupational therapist, and Darcy Sakaric, the physical therapist, did presentations on executive function skills and how to incorporate movement into learning activities for kids that they can do both within the classroom and outside of the classroom. We also did some additional G Suite and Google Classroom training for our teachers. Today, which is Wednesday, was kind of our medical day. Dr. McConnell came and spoke to both groups, and Nurse Melissa did a couple of sessions with both groups. And I appreciate both of their expertise. Dr. McConnell brought lots of great information that was, I think, hopefully somewhat reassuring to staff in terms of some of those unknown questions that us lay people can't really answer. So I thank her for coming and presenting that information. And Nurse Melissa did a great job reviewing all of the nurse procedures that we're going to have to make for adjustments. So we've had a very productive and busy first few days.
Isn't this all of a sudden Mason's
Thank you very much, Mr. Ladd. Ms. Fawcett.
Good evening. So one of the things not related to special ed that I want to make sure that gets said is that facilities and maintenance staff have done an amazing job. Mr. Delisle, your mic is on, just so you know. Facilities and maintenance have done an amazing job getting all of the furniture moved throughout all of the buildings. They have really been doing a ton. So I just want to make sure that they're recognized as well. But in regards to special education, we have been working to ensure that PPE is available for the staff to support the needs of students that we have within the district. We're working on scheduling meetings for those new students that have come into Winthrop. We do have a significant number of students that have moved into Winthrop this fall. It's looking like we're around 11 or so new special ed students, with only a few moving out of the district. We are looking at about 24% or so of our special ed population participating remotely in instruction this fall. We have been working on the professional development. So the staff has been attending all of the in-school sessions. They've had some time to work on developing some plans and what have you. I've been going around to the district meeting with staff. I was able to do some meetings remotely over the summer, but it's really nice to see people in person, even with a mask on, to really get to know people and what have you. And then one of the big things that I've been doing the last few days is reaching out to all families of special ed students that have declared that they're doing homeschool instruction, because I want to make sure that they are using the term homeschool correctly, for one, because there is a difference between homeschool instruction and remote instruction, and there are implications for special education if families choose remote. And all families that I spoke with did understand the implications for special ed, and we talked about what would happen in the event that they return. And we're definitely going to make sure that those services are continued when they return.
Thank you very much. Ms. Weeks, is she with us this evening?
I don't think she is. I think Mr. Delisle is with you.
Yep. Mr. Courier? Okay. Mr. Delisle? Mr. Delisle, you're on. There we go.
Hey, how are you?
I'm wicked well. How are you?
Good.
Good. So how have the professional development days gone for you?
I think they've gone fairly well. We've had a couple of days. I had a tech team that's done, I think we've done 4 sessions each day for about an hour apiece. I did one on Google Meets. I'd like to personally thank Tiff Shaw. I'm going to end up forgetting somebody. Crystalina Zuski, Meagan White, and of course I'm forgetting a few folks who each ran a session and helped with training the staff in the high school and middle school. And then the grade school had their own team that did some professional development in areas of technology that they'll all be using for remote learning and power school and that sort of stuff.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Delisle? Mr. Delisle, I asked Superintendent Hodgkins the question that I had for you, and that was just the equipment that we haven't gotten in and don't think that we're going to get in for a little while. How will it impact our remote education offering?
Ultimately, we're trying to make sure that any of the folks who have decided to do remote learning, that at bare minimum, we have devices for those remote learners first, and then hopefully, should we go into a red light situation, hopefully by that time, we have got the remaining devices and can ensure that everybody has a device.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Farr?
He's not on it.
All right, that's it. At this point, what?
How about Mr.
Oh,
Stone?
we'll come back to Mr. Staunton. All right, Mr. Staunton, you
I
have
just
more
wanted
to say.
to let the principals go home. It's been a long night for them for lots of other stuff. I just wanted to not miss the opportunity to let folks know, if you don't already, that Lonnie Steves was selected as the Volunteer of the Year out of the state of Maine from the MPA. We put his name forward last year, and it was quite extensive, the amount of things that he does, not only for us, but for others. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that tonight, because he certainly does a lot for this community, as we were speaking of the why earlier. So congratulations to Lonnie. Very proud to know him and have him working with our schools.
That's excellent. Thank you, Joel. And Tiff Shaw said Ariel Boulette and Darcy Adams as well. I guess that was helping with Mr. Delisle and the tech stuff.
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you. Community, this is your opportunity to talk about anything with Winthrop education. So I'll just wait a couple of minutes and you can type in your comment or question if you have one. From Ms. Fish. My daughter is remote learning at the high school, and the packet we received from the school said we needed to fill out the acceptable use agreement on familyid.com. Can't find anything on there. Also, when and where do we pick up laptops? Mr. Campbell or Mr. Delisle or Mr. Staunton? Okay.
Yes, so we met as an A-team today. We are in the process, and I also did receive your email today. Thank you for reaching out to me. We just are in the process of putting up the final forms on Family ID, and you are welcome to come in anytime this week. Mr. Delisle has all of the laptops ready to go.
Okay. From Melissa Brewer, all the PD days have been amazing. I am grateful for the extra time. Thank you. Carl Swanson said, what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous? Carl Swanson. Synchronous would be, Mr. Swanson, we have a remote learner that's in English, freshman English, for example. That remote learner would be online, witnessing the same class as with the other freshman English people at the same time, same schedule. Asynchronous would probably mean that the teacher would record a separate lesson and have that sent to the remote student. How'd I do with that, Jana?
Oh.
Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Sorry, we are not doing that, but I believe, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
We are just doing remote or at my school. Sorry, not at Winthrop. I don't want to confuse people. I don't work at Winthrop. But yes, that is my understanding as well.
Okay. Thank you. From Kristen, academic cohorts for the middle school, are those different than their advisee groups? If this groups are different, right there. Different groups, different, right, there will be mixing kids. They are mixing kids. I'm not good on that. Can anybody know? I'm missing what she's saying here.
Was it
Anybody
for the
help
high
me?
school? I mean, for the middle school?
Yes. Can you read that comment right there, Sue?
I don't know how to.
Okay.
I think what she's asking, Ginny, is if
Yeah.
the folks that are in homeroom or advisee are going to be mixing with the cohorts academically. I don't think that is the case. I think that, well, I know teachers are moving from room to room, and I believe that the cohorts have been assigned to homeroom, and then the teachers will work through there for the academics.
That's
So,
how I've understood it as well.
yeah, so I do believe that that is the case, and they will not be mixing academically.
Right. Jen
That is
Moody.
correct.
Okay, we got another. Yes, that's the way it is.
Jenny?
Yes.
I could be wrong about this, but the way I understand it is that the advisee groups are going to be a lot smaller. They might be, say, half the size of an academic cohort. And that is for the purpose of spreading out to eat and such. But then maybe two of those advisee groups would come together to make one academic cohort.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the way I understand it.
Yep. Okay, I'm losing these. Is the grade school start time the same? I noticed with the bus schedule that was just released, there are pickup times at 8:37. I believe school start time was 8:40. Can anybody handle that?
Did Mr. Ladd leave? He may have gone too.
I think he did, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Ladd have an hour ride home, and I think they reported out last.
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit about that. Just
Okay,
this is
go
our
ahead, Ms.
Melissa.
Brewer. Thank you.
What I understand is drop off is the normal 8:10, and to sort of stagger the schedules, buses I think 8:45. To speak on Jenny Moody, I know she lives nearby, so that would make sense. Or 8:40, 8:45, so to sort of stagger the schedule for drop-offs and bus drop-offs, if that makes sense. So yes,
No,
school technically starts at 8:40, but with obviously everything going on, it is going to be, a little bit different this year, or at least to start in trial by error.
To try to spread kids out.
Correct.
Yep. Deb Fish, also, how will the first day for remote students look if we aren't sure about the sync or async? Good question. I don't even, yes, Superintendent Hodgkins.
Well, the decision about whether staff are going to do, they have a choice between, they choose synchronous versus asynchronous. It's not a remote learner choice. The teachers will be reaching out to the cohorts, to their cohorts, and letting them know when they're going to be providing instruction and whether or not they're going to be doing it synchronously or asynchronously. So it's not a choice for the, it's not something the parents have to be concerned about whether they're, which the teacher is doing. That's a teacher choice.
But how will the student find out which way the teacher is doing it?
They will, and it's possible, particularly if you're talking about the high school or the middle school, it's possible that different teachers will be doing it differently, and they'll be reaching out to the parents as they're preparing for their lessons and instruction to let them know which way they're doing it.
Before the first day of school?
Probably not.
Well, that's why Joel.
The high school will be having the teachers email the students to let them know.
Okay. Do you know if Miss Fish's students are in the high school?
I do. I believe that she has a student in the high school, and I think she just asked the former question. and we can certainly review that when she picks up her computer.
Excellent, thank you. From Kristen, Miss Chris was talking about not mixing groups of kids. We were told that they were 2 different groups. Anyone?
I don't know what the question means. If she's talking about the synchronous, asynchronous, that's, again, has nothing to do with the groupings. That's delivery of instruction.
I think she was talking back about the academic and the advising.
Yeah. And I think you did a good job on that, Miss Bells. So I hope that was good enough for Kristen. From Grace, I was told that the advisee groups are going to be with one other group in the cohorts. They were split to be able to eat with a mask off. That's exactly what Miss Bells said. Yep, thank you. That confirms that. From Darcy Baird, some cohorts have co-advisors, so cohorts are separated for connections. Okay. Eat with mask off. Some cohorts have, okay. I don't think I read Grace's right. I was told that the advisory groups are going to be with one other group in the cohorts. They were split to be able to eat with mask off. Right. Down to Deb Fisher. Also have a question about children who attend CATSI. The CATSI website said schools would be working on transportation from our home to high school, from high school to CATSI and back. Is that how it will work? And will kids need to transport themselves to the high school to catch the CATSI bus? Another question. Well, let's answer that one first. Joel, can you answer that one?
No, I can't. I don't know all the details, but from what I understand, that we will be providing some form of transportation from the high school. I don't know if that, I haven't seen the letter, so I don't know if that letter came from Augusta, which means that they will pick up students to bring them to CATSI just in Augusta. So I would defer that to Mr. Campo at a later time.
Would you, Ms. Fish, would you please email Mr. Campbell? Because we don't know the answer.
Actually, I'll weigh in a little bit, but
Okay.
it doesn't really change the answer. But I think what Mr. Stonington just said is correct. I do not believe, in talking to Larry Allen from Northeast Charters, that it was our intent to pick up our students at their houses and then bring them to CATSI or I think the plan is still the same. I think that letter, as Mr. Stonington just said, is really for Augusta. That we're going to expect that our students get to the high school and we'll transport them from the high school. I've heard no conversation that would say otherwise for that.
Another question. We will bear with you, Ms. Fish. Can you speak to how community service hour requirements will work? Anybody?
That would have to be Mr. Stonington.
Am I getting principal pay at this point?
Principal recognition.
Great,
Just
thank you.
recognition, yeah.
That's great. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that last spring that you folks as a school committee did change the policy on that just because of COVID-19. And I think actually that's a great question because we should probably take a look at that for the fall. Unless Mr. Trump has some form of miraculous that I don't know about yet.
Vaccine, yeah.
Vaccine, I'm not sure how that would work, but
We did waive them last spring, though.
we did, and that's actually, in all seriousness, that's a great question. I think we should probably take a look at that. Ms. Geyer, maybe we can put that on the policy committee agenda.
Okay, good idea. The arrival and dismissal times were posted on the grade school website today. excuse me, there are some changes in times and procedures from last year. And grade school parent drop-off will start at 8:10, like last year. Bus drop-off will begin at 8:30. Ms. Fish says, sorry, Joel. And Melissa Brewer, Joel earns it. There we go. All right. Before anybody writes anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do you want to do school committee comments?
No.
Oh, I'm good with that.
No, I don't. Jana. But thanks for reminding me there, Superintendent Hodgkin. Jana.
Just good luck. I know you guys are very lucky to have these PD days, and I'm glad we were able to give them to you and you were able to take advantage of them. Having started with kids today, at least to start, it was not as awful as I thought it was going to be. The kids did a really great job, and just good luck. You guys can do this, and we got to do it. It was really good to see the kids, though. It was awesome. So good luck, and thank you for all the work that everyone is doing to prepare and get ready, and then to have it change and then have to configure and figure it out all over again. So thank you. It's appreciated.
Ms. Shumway.
Yeah, I concur with everything that Jana is saying, besides the starting with students, since I'm no longer in the classroom. But I'm glad, Jana, that you had a great first day back. And I hope that the same holds for all of our administrators, teachers, and staff. And I just want to encourage everyone to be patient, from students to teachers to administrators, staff. Be patient with each other, be patient with yourself. This is a lot to take on, and it's all new, and we'll make adjustments accordingly. And I know that everyone will do great, and and good luck. So thank you.
Mr. Petrosky.
Thank you. I want to also give a big ditto to Jana and Kristen and everyone else here. It's been great walking the dog around the neighborhood here, talking with the students. They can't wait to go back. They're so excited about the whole thing. So I'm looking forward, and I'm sure some of the teachers are too, with some great early days and some difficult days, but we'll get through it. I'm pretty optimistic about it. We're going to get through this. Thank you, everybody, for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Ms. Bells?
Not much left to say. Everybody said it so well. And just quickly, that I attended the welcome back session with the superintendent at the high school, and I know I felt really excited to be sitting in the pack, and it just felt so good it felt so right and so normal to be back. So I can imagine that the kids will feel that way as well. So.
Thank you, Ms. Bells, and ditto on everyone else. And but my word for this month of August, and is going to continue for the month of September is just please cooperate and be gentle with everybody. Everybody's trying to do the best that they can, and we sure do appreciate everybody's efforts. Community, parents, we appreciate your efforts very much in helping with your children so that everything goes smoothly, that they have some sort of idea what it means to and what it looks like to cooperate with all the new standards that we have. So please take care. Thank you all very much for all that you do. Our teachers, staff, administrators, our parents, and of course, our students. We wish you a very great start. I want to thank the superintendent for heading up what looks to be a great start through a very difficult time. And I also share Mr. Petrosky's optimism. We just have to get at it instead of continuing to massage it so much. Anything, Mr. Hodgkin?
Mr. Stone.
Mr. Stone.
Mr. Staunton wants to go. Miss Bells, you're on.
Oh, Mr. Staunton has something to
Oh,
say.
you wanted to say something. I thought you were saying goodbye.
No,
Staunton.
Mr. Stoughton wanted to.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say goodbye. Sorry, Mr. Staunton.
No, I just, are we continuing with high school sports? I don't want to open up something because we're all ready to go, but is that what has been decided? We talked a lot about middle school.
I thought the recommendation was to wait and see what comes out.
Perfect. Just checking.
Does everyone concur with me?
Yes.
Is that your thinking?
Yes, absolutely. We kind
Or
of
we could have another discussion for a couple hours.
No.
Once again, I'm going to ask Miss Bells to take over. Go.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.